Hi everyone and welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And please support the author by link in description.
Lord of Mystery. I traveled through time and became Amon's clone by author Li Meng Zhen. Chapter 101 to 125. Chapter 101. Dust Gudrian. The dozen or so words on the finely cut slip of paper caused the half of Duckwell's chubby face visible beneath the iron mask to tighten instantly. Fine beads of sweat could even be seen rolling down from the tip of his nose and cheeks. The tense atmosphere caused the gathering to fall somewhat silent. He read it over several times before finally asking in a slightly heavy voice, "May I know your purpose?" Li Meng, having come prepared, pulled out a fountain pen and a slip of paper. After quickly finishing his writing on the small tea table in front of him, he folded it and handed it to the attendant. The tiny slip of paper seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. When taking the note, Li Meng saw Duckwell's hand seemingly tremble uncontrollably for a moment. "I don't know if this is true or false, and there's no way to verify it right now. I need time. I'll give you the answer at the next gathering. For such extremely dangerous news, the information fee is at least 150 pounds. After thinking for a moment, Duckwell spoke again. "This matter carries immense risk, and I really don't want to do it. If I hadn't been unable to find the medullary crystals of the Fountain of Elves, I would absolutely never have made this deal with you." "No problem. It will take me at least a week to obtain the medullary crystals of the Fountain of Elves." Sensing the fear in the other's voice, Li Meng knew that this deal was effectively settled. The rest of the gathering returned to being mundane. That lady brought out several weapons for sale, finely crafted items that lacked Beander effects, all priced under 20 pounds. Seeing that the gathering was more than halfway through and most transactions were complete, Li Meng seized a gap, stood up, and asked in a slightly sharp voice, "Who has a shadow ghost rabbit head? Or providing a lead is also fine, I can pay the corresponding information fee." Just as Li Meng expected, there was no response for a long time. Just as Li Meng was about to sit down in disappointment, a slightly raspy male voice reached his ears. "I have a lead, but it might not be useful. If you want to know, you must first pay a fee of 50 pounds. Without hesitation, Li Meng pulled 5 10-pound notes from his breast pocket and handed them to the attendant. These were specifically withdrawn from Backland Bank for tonight's gathering. The attendant took the notes, counted them briefly, and nodded to the man who had spoken. He took paper and pen from the attendant, wrote his message, folded it carefully, and handed it to Li Meng. "I know of a Beander gathering where it is for sale. If you have enough pounds, I can take you there." Li Meng had originally thought Black Snake would contact him proactively, but could this person selling information be another Aurora Order believer? Seeing Li Meng still hesitating with the note, the voice seemed to fear he would back out and wrote another note to be handed over. "Mr. A is extremely powerful, and there are many materials at the gathering. As long as you have enough pounds, I guarantee you will get what you want." Seeing this note, Li Meng felt a bit dazed. At Mr. A's gatherings, even if there were Beander materials for the secret supplicant pathway, they would have been snatched up by the Aurora Order long ago. This was also why Black Snake hadn't reacted. As an Aurora Order member, even if he didn't participate in the gatherings hosted by Mr. A, there was a high probability he would know of their existence through various channels. The Aurora Order would not allow these materials to flow out. This person selling information might be someone who deeply admired Mr. A's strength, but they likely weren't part of the Aurora Order. They might not even know that Mr. A was an oracle of the Aurora Order. But that was fine, it saved him from finding another way to contact the Aurora Order. Right pointing arrow. Seeing that Li Meng seemed very satisfied with the content of the note, the black-robed man finally took the pounds from the attendant, tucked them away, and handed Li Meng another slip of paper. "Tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, wait for me at the intersection of Hull Street and Empress Borough. I will take you there." Li Meng put the note in his pocket and nodded to the man who sold the information. The other party gave a nearly imperceptible nod in return. Tingen City, Henry's private detective agency. Klein once again saw Detective Henry, who looked like a middle-aged tough guy. "Good afternoon, sir. One of your commissions has a result. The gentleman who frequents the Evil Dragon Bar is named Dust Gudrian, a doctor at the Greenhill Asylum. Detective Henry, with his deep blue eyes, spoke in a gravelly voice roughened by smoke and alcohol. Klein pulled out 4 one-pound notes, paused, and added, "Write me a receipt." "No problem." Henry coughed twice, checking the notes for anti-counterfeiting marks while instructing an employee to bring paper and a pen. Immediately after, he invited Klein to sit in the sofa area, quickly wrote the receipt, and stamped it. Watching Detective Henry's practiced movements, Klein felt a bit of a heartache for his money. Is this one of the 3 clues mentioned by the Hanged Man? The Hanged Man's information sources are truly terrifying. To know a member of the psychology alchemists in a remote place like Tingen so detail-edly, what else does he not know? Could the Hanged Man be a member of the psychology alchemists? It's very possible. He described the prowess of high-sequence powerhouses of the spectator pathway. Even if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he had at least heard of it. Klein thought carefully for a while and ruled out this possibility, because he could secretly observe others' astral bodies through the mysterious space above the gray fog, and he had already done so many times. On the back of Miss Justice's chair was the symbol of a giant dragon, while the Hanged Man's was a blurred figure hanging upside down. Although Klein didn't know what this meant, it at least showed they were not beyonders of the same pathway. If the Hanged Man were a member of the psychology alchemists, he could have just contacted them offline. There would be no need for the fool at all, nor would he redundantly provide 3 clues. This only indicated that behind the Hanged Man was a powerful mysterious organization, one quite familiar with the psychology alchemists. As for which organization it was, there were no clues yet, but Klein believed that as the Tarot Club continued to meet, the exposure of information was only a matter of time, especially regarding the Hanged Man. While selling information, he would inevitably expose his identity bit by bit. As for this Dust Gudrian, I can try to make contact. He found inspiration from the police and spy movies he had watched, thinking he could use his identity as a Nighthawk to gather more information from him. If the Tarot Club involves this clue again, I can very easily tell everyone. That way, the fool's mysterious image will be even more solidified. Who would have thought that the fool would know a member of the psychology alchemists in remote Tingen City like the back of his hand? At this thought, the corners of Klein's mouth curled up, and those 4 pounds he had just paid didn't hurt quite as much. Chapter 102, Number 7773. Chapter 102, Number 7773. Please add to collection and vote. Forsaken Land of the Gods. In the eternal, deep darkness, a group of Amons avatars, thin and wearing black classical robes with a monocle on their right eyes, sat in a circle within a crumbling temple. In the very center of the temple stood a tall divine statue. The thunder and lightning unique to the forsaken land of the gods illuminated the statue. Its facial features actually bore a resemblance to the man in black sitting below, making for a rather macabre sight. Number 7773, since when was there an extra statue here? I remember this being the temple of the true creator. A relatively young-looking avatar curiously looked toward the avatar surrounded by everyone in the center. Among the black-haired avatars, this one had fiery red hair and skin covered in flame-shaped scars, making him particularly eye-catching. What's so strange about it? I had nothing better to do, so I carved a statue for myself. Is that a problem? Number 7773 took off the monocle from his right eye, tossed it casually onto the ground, and rubbed his eye socket hard with his right hand. I really don't understand why we have to wear this all day long. It looks incredibly stupid. Sitting next to him, a fair-skinned avatar with delicate features frowned at the monocle on the ground and added with slight dissatisfaction. After putting on the glasses, especially these asymmetrical ones, I don't even want to look in the mirror. Men's aesthetics are truly strange. The avatar sitting opposite number 7773 looked quite old. Gray-white beard and hair hung loosely over his body, and his eyes were dark and deep, filled with a sense of wisdom and mystery. He looked like both a knowledgeable mentor and a gifted artist. He bent down with some difficulty, picked up the monocle that had been thrown on the ground, carefully wiped off the dust, and placed it into the pocket of his black classical robe. Number 4125, don't say such things anymore. This is a symbol of Amon's authority. If you're found discarding it at will, your Beander characteristic will inevitably be reclaimed. You're still young, with at least decades left to live. Just stay in the forsaken land of the gods and don't act recklessly so you can live longer. Look at us old-timers, we've gotten used to wearing it. Having said that, he turned his head to look at number 7773 in the center and said in a heavy tone. I'll keep it for you for now. Put it back on when you return. Over there, they probably aren't as particular about this. That's enough, number 3002. I'm not dead yet, there's no need to handle my final affairs. Number 7773 looked at the old man, his words sounding somewhat angry. Seeing me go to the land of betrayal, you all might be quite excited deep down. If you're truly reluctant to see me go, then pray to my statue more often in the future. I'll be able to sense it. How can that be? You're not a demigod, so how can you receive prayers? It's against the rules. Before the voice had even faded, the young avatar stood up and loudly retorted. But seeing that the other avatars didn't back him up, he could only sit back down dejectedly. After a long silence, number 4125 looked thoughtfully at the statue whose face was covered in colorful paint and suddenly spoke. I heard that outside the forsaken land of the gods, there's something called cosmetics that can make people more beautiful. Remember to bring some back for me when you go out. I can help look after your statue, I'll even pray to it 3 times a day. Number 7773 glanced at number 4125, seemingly reminded of something interesting, as the corners of his mouth began to curl upward. I still have half a bucket of dye here. I made it from the blood of monsters in the darkness. It won't fade for half a year once poured on the face. Do you want some? If you're interested, I can also tell you where to find that kind of monster. An avatar sitting on the very edge also looked somewhat aged, but his limbs were thick and powerful, and his entire being radiated a vitality unique to young people. He had been watching everyone bicker and only now chimed in. Number 7773, you're about to leave the forsaken land of the gods. Can't you leave a good impression on everyone? We only came to see you off because we are fellow low-sequence avatars of the non-thief pathways. You should watch yourself. Number 5760, if it weren't for you, would number 9998 have gone to the land of betrayal? Where do you get the courage to speak? Could it be that you've been corrupted by the hidden sage? Do you need me to help reclaim your Beander characteristic? Number 7773, don't think I'm afraid of you just because you're a sequence 7. Do you know how a melee scholar's potion is digested? Number 5760 stood up as he spoke, seemingly about to take off his black classical robe and engage in a fist-to-flesh duel with No. 7773. But before he could fully stand, an aged right hand pressed heavily on his shoulder, forcing him back onto the ground. Number 3002, don't stop me. With how number 7773 is acting, can he even stay hidden in the land of betrayal? I'm doing this to help him gain some life experience. The old man withdrew his hand from No 5760's shoulder and said earnestly. You can't beat him. Although you are a melee scholar, the hunter pathway is naturally skilled in stealth and combat. Furthermore, he has already consumed the Conspirer potion. Even if it's not yet digested, his strength has surely increased significantly. If you really fight, your life will be in danger. Number 9998 left in a hurry, and we weren't close to him, so we didn't go to see him off. This time, since number 7773 is leaving the forsaken land of the gods, it's only right that those of us nearby see him off. Perhaps if number 7773 advances to a demigod in the future, he can give us all a hand. No 3002's voice was low and powerful, exceptionally serious. Life isn't easy for low-sequence avatars, especially those of non-thief pathways. I've watched over 100 avatars walk out of the forsaken land of the gods, and not a single one has returned. I hope everyone can unite and not learn from the avatars of certain pathways who take pleasure in fraud and trickery. It would be fine if they were deceiving other Beyonders, but most of those methods are used on us low-sequence avatars. Under everyone's envious gazes, number 3002 pulled out a pocket watch whose case had been polished to a shine from frequent rubbing. He clicked it open and checked the time. It's almost 12 o'clock, the departure time stipulated by No. 3. Let me see you off. The old man put away the pocket watch and pulled a somewhat old parchment scroll from his robes, slowly unfurling it. On the scroll, drawn with extremely simple and abstract brushwork, were mystical creatures that had long since vanished into the river of history. Although only their outlines were depicted, the danger and mystery of these lives still radiated through the scroll, affecting all the avatars present. This was No 3002's unique sealed artifact, a gift made by the Dragon of Wisdom, Harabergen for the ancient sun god's birthday, the Book of Ancient Creatures. It depicted the creatures that had ruled the world before the Third Epoch. Those extinct beings could briefly exert the power they left behind in history through their portraits. Of course, now it only had a tacky name, No 3002's Scholar of Your Scroll. Chapter 103, King of the Sky. As the scroll slowly unfurled, strangely shaped and uniquely styled lifeforms gradually emerged on the yellowed parchment. Some resembled clusters of oversized maggots, some were lumps of flesh covered in tentacles, some looked like a puddle of wriggling yellow liquid, and others were like octopuses floating in the air. Their shapes were bizarre and varied, manifesting the diverse and unrestrained lifeforms created by the Creator before humans ruled this world. The scroll floated in the air, stretching further as spirituality was injected into it. The images upon it became increasingly realistic, as if ancient creatures were returning to the world. One could even smell the bloody scent emanating from them. Number 3002 closed his eyes, fumbled in his pocket to pull out an old book page covered in writing, and threw it toward the floating parchment scroll. The moment the words on the page touched the scroll, they seemed to come alive, struggling frantically on the paper like little tadpoles wanting to leave their pond for the vast ocean. The old page turned from an aged yellow to a white that looked as if it had just been manufactured. It was clean, with no trace of writing or even marks of having been written on. The words that had left the paper, as if gaining the freedom only living beings could experience, joyfully rushed into the parchment scroll and vanished within. A giant avian phantom, covered in golden feathers with a massive red crest on its head and sharp claws like steel blades, slowly flew out from the scroll. The progenitor phoenix, Gregory. No 7773's legs began to tremble slightly, and his speech became stuttered. Don't worry, my friend. This isn't regress. The phoenix ancestor died at our father's hands. My memory isn't so poor that I'd summon her historical projection. Furthermore, at that time, Dragon of Wisdom, Harabergen was merely an angel. How would he dare depict the image of an ancient god or summon an ancient god's historical projection? Seeing all the clones present trembling under the pressure of the historical projection, not even daring to look directly at it, number 3002 seemed to find some satisfaction and explained unhurriedly. This is the brother of the progenitor phoenix, Gregory, king of the sky, Flogely. He mastered the apprentice pathway and was once an angel. Number 3002 shook his head and said with a hint of regret. To master even greater power, the progenitor phoenix, Gregory killed her brother and swallowed his Beander characteristic whole. This made her more powerful, but also more insane. Flogely's descendants wandered in exile for centuries under Gregrace's pursuit until they met our father, which ended their tragic flight. He knelt on the ground, clutching father's legs and weeping for 7 days and 7 nights before father took him in, renamed him Bethel Abraham, and designated a human woman to be his wife. As the first non-human angel to follow the sun god, Bethel Abraham's loyalty was affirmed by father. He was bestowed with the Beander characteristics needed to become a god of the apprentice pathway, becoming the strongest beneath the true gods. Have none of you read the contents of the Creator's sacred scripture. Number 3002 half closed his eyes, stroking the grayish-white beard on his chin. Though he seemed to be questioning them, his expression was one of enjoyment. Time is almost up. I'll send you to the nearest temple. No 1011 is waiting for you there. Seeing everyone trembling under the pressure, number 3002 satisfiedly chanted an incantation. The phantom of Flogely, king of the sky, suddenly distorted, transforming into a cyan portal made of overlapping spheres of light. This portal no longer possessed the divine pressure but gained a more mysterious and ancient aura. It stood tall, and on the other side of the portal was a boundless gray fog, as if leading to a hidden and unknown place. Go in quickly, the projection won't last much longer. Number 7773 stepped into the light gate at his fastest speed, and the gate immediately vanished. The scroll lost its power source and fell to the ground with a snap, landing right on top of the white paper. This thing isn't easy to use, every time it requires a page of secret history from at least 3,000 years ago. Number 3002 picked up the parchment scroll and put it in his breast pocket. The white paper instantly turned to ash, vanishing into the endless darkness of the forsaken land of the gods. The intersection of Hall Street in Backland Queen District. Since Count Hall took charge of the new party, many nobles who followed him moved here, turning it into the new party's stronghold. Now, few people remember the original name of this street. To the residents of Backland, it has become entirely associated with Count Hall. Li Meng changed into a brand new white shirt, with a set of equally new low and black formal wear over it. This cost him a full £20, making his newly purchased wallet quite a bit thinner. He sat in a hired carriage, observing the outside through the window of the cabin. At the Eye of Wisdom's gathering, the person who provided the lead didn't give a specific contact method. Now, they could only identify each other through guesswork and voices. This crude meeting method forced both parties to be wary of each other, but at least it avoided one party using a secret signal to harm the other. To rent this carriage, Li Meng spent a full £5. As carriage is unique to the Queen District, they even had requirements for passengers, they must be neatly and cleanly dressed. More importantly, like an identification document, certain villas only allowed such luxuriously and elegantly decorated carriages to enter. Unlike the Hillsden district, it was quiet and cool here, with tall plane trees planted all around, preventing the scorching sunlight from reaching the ground. Li Meng even heard the long-absent sound of cicadas, adding a bit of sweltering heat to the silent air. There were almost no pedestrians on the road, only carriages passing by in a hurry. To observe better, Li Meng had arrived here at 5 in the afternoon to start observing the surroundings and familiarize himself with the route. Li Meng remembered that Miss Justice Audrey lived here. He had originally wanted to see what Audrey looked like in reality, but after seeing the towering castle in the distance and the guards standing solemnly at the gate, he decisively gave up. The two parties were from completely different worlds. If it weren't for the Tarot Club, he wouldn't even have the right to speak with Mr. Fool or Audrey, let alone trade. Although in this era, the relationships between nobles were messy, the boundaries between classes were clear. Even the wealthiest merchant had to serve carefully when meeting the most destitute noble. If Count Hall found out about the transaction between him and Audrey, he would have already secretly dispatched people to capture him. Every transmigrator has an inherent sense of superiority and detachment, but as time passes, reality gradually grinds away these illusory feelings, making one accept all the settings of reality. Unless one is a natural-born lucky person, even the most arrogant person will be influenced by reality. No matter how many memories one has from before transmigration, they are just memories, while everything here is a tangible reality. For example, Li Meng's current identity is Amon's clone number 9998, the Aurora Order member Julius, and Mr. Hanged Man in the Tarot Club. He is anything but an imperial noble born with a silver spoon. For his current self, the safest way to deal with Audrey and Klein is to continue playing the role of Mr. Hanged Man in the Tarot Club. Chapter 104, Mr. Piano. Chapter 104, Mr. Piano, launching tomorrow. Please add to collection, subscribe, and give recommendation votes. Thank you everyone. Click. Li Meng clicked open his pocket watch once again. It was already 7:10. He looked out through the small carriage window but still hadn't spotted the person who claimed they would take him to Mr. A's gathering. The sky was gradually darkening. The sun had already set, and the crimson moon had yet to rise. Hall Street, which was already relatively quiet, was now even more silent. Unlike the middle class, who hurried to work during the day and only relaxed slightly at night, the nobles here strictly adhered to their daily schedules. Of course, this was because their houses were large and spacious enough for any entertainment to take place indoors or at a club, sparing them from having to kill time in crowded places. The evening breeze blew through the tall plane trees, making a soft rustling sound. Carrying a hint of lingering summer heat and the scent of dust kicked up in the air, it wafted into Li Meng's nose as he sat by the carriage window. Just as Li Meng's mind wandered slightly, a black carriage slowly drove over from the end of the road. As the two carriages passed each other, the curtain on the opposite carriage opened, revealing a figure hidden beneath a black hood. Upon seeing Li Meng's carriage, the figure looked up slightly. Li Meng saw the half-face black iron mask he wore, identical to the one he had seen last night at the Brave Ones bar in the Backland Bridge district. Seeing Li Meng dressed in full formal attire with his face completely exposed, he seemed somewhat surprised. His hand rubbed the mask on his face for a while before finally dropping it powerlessly. "Take my carriage. The driver has been there several times and is familiar with the way." The voice of the man in the black iron mask was still somewhat hoarse, but Li Meng could sense that it had recovered slightly compared to yesterday. Something was wrong with his throat. He wondered what kind of situation could cause an injury there. Li Meng paid the driver a £5 fare, feeling a slight pang of regret. Had he known, he should have settled by the hour. Instead, at the driver's prompting, he had booked the carriage for the entire day. What a loss. Stepping into the other carriage, Li Meng found the interior empty except for the man in the black iron mask sitting by the window. Seeing Li Meng enter, the man lowered the curtain. Once Li Meng was seated opposite him, he asked in a low voice. "Are you the one who spent £50 to buy information yesterday?" "Yes. I hope Mr. A's gathering will have what I want." "I know it won't. I just want to go there once." Li Meng answered internally, then asked in return. "Are you sure you saw a shadow ghost, rabbit head for sale at the gathering?" The voice of the man in the black iron mask grew even lower. Even sitting in the same carriage, it was a bit difficult to hear. "Yes, I saw someone selling one, but it was bought very quickly. Since it wasn't something I needed, I didn't pay attention to who it ended up with. However, since it appeared once, it will appear again. I know who bought it." Li Meng also lowered his voice and said, "Do you remember the price? I'd like to get a general idea of the transactions and the gathering." A reasonable request, and it's also something I wanted to mention. Mr. A is a powerful Beander. I'm not saying the old gentleman, Eye of Wisdom, isn't powerful, he is, but it's not as obvious as Mr. A makes it. He looked up at Li Meng. Even through the black iron mask, Li Meng could feel the doubt in his eyes. "I didn't expect you to be so young. What I mean is, you look too handsome. You might attract unnecessary attention at the gathering. This is a Beander trade gathering, not a blind date dinner, it will cause trouble." "Of course I am handsome, this is the Aurora Order's corporate culture." To better play the role of an Aurora Order member, Li Meng had spent a long time in front of the mirror using his shepherd's gloves number 9998 to make adjustments. Although it was easy for a faceless to change their appearance, it was still very painful. After all, it involved shifting one's flesh and blood bit by bit. In short, he currently looked like Julius, but with significant changes in the details. An acquaintance might recognize him, but if he firmly denied it, no one could state with certainty that he was Julius. This kind of ambiguous change made it easier for people to be vague about and forget the changes in Julius. A qualified Aurora Order member, especially in the leadership, had strict requirements for their appearance. Generally speaking, the more outstanding one's appearance, the easier it was to be valued and promoted. In Li Meng's hazy memory, he recalled that in order to make his appearance more beautiful, Mr. A had gone so far as to graze a demoness of afflictions, using the demoness of afflictions, Beander characteristic over many years to alter his features and physique. If not for the nickname, Mr. A, there would be no problem calling him Madam A. Seeing Li Meng seemingly lost in thought, the man in the black iron mask coughed slightly and continued. "Regardless, do not provoke any conflict at Mr. A's gathering. He is not a reasonable person, and things often develop beyond our imagination. Many people have targeted him in the past, and now all those people have disappeared." The hands of the man in the black iron mask trembled slightly, as if pressing keys on an invisible keyboard. "By the way, let me introduce myself. You can call me Piano. How should I address you?" Li Meng also gave the title he had been thinking about for a long time. Piano. What a unique name. I'm Lemon. That sounds equally original. This gentleman named Piano seemed to be trying hard to suppress a smile, racking his brain to come up with a compliment. Time passed quickly as they chatted, and soon they stopped in front of a detached villa. Li Meng discovered that this Mr. Piano seemed to have a talent for humor, but he appeared very dull and was unwilling to use those faculties. Well, like a brilliant artist whom everyone knows is talented, but who firmly denies it and is ashamed of artistic creation. Li Meng knew this was a man with a story. Mr. Piano stepped forward and knocked on the wooden door of the detached villa with an interval of 3 long and 2 short knocks. With a creak, the front door slowly swung open. Li Meng saw quite a few people sitting scattered inside. A few of them, like him, had made no attempt at disguise and were openly showing their features. This gathering is very direct, with almost no concealment measures, was Li Meng's first reaction. He had participated in many Biander gatherings before. These gatherings usually separated the entrance from the meeting place and even arranged for a dedicated gatekeeper to check those coming and going, all in an effort to be cautious and avoid discovery by outsiders. It was also common to frequently change contact methods or directly hide the gathering place. For example, that Black Abyss Castle. Although Li Meng had attended many times, he still didn't know where this mysterious castle was located. In his exchanges with Mr. Locke, he found that this spectator, who had attended dozens of times, also knew very little about the Black Abyss Castle. Although mysterious, these Biander gatherings matched Li Meng's understanding. After all, official Bianders were not easily fooled. A slight oversight could put everyone at the gathering in danger. This was the first time he had seen one where opening the door led directly to the meeting hall. Seeing how practiced Mr. Piano's knocking was, he feared that they hadn't even changed the secret signal for the gathering in a long time. Launching tomorrow. Please add to collection, subscribe, and give recommendation votes. I hope everyone can support with a subscription. Writing as a newcomer is not easy. Thank you everyone. Chapter 105, Mr. A. Almost instantly, Li Meng noticed a black-robed man sitting on a single-seater sofa diagonally opposite the main entrance. The man wore a hood, hiding his features and body in the shadows, but even so, one could still feel the cruelty and madness emanating from him. He watched the visitors quietly and silently. Though seated, he gave off a condescending sense of looking down from above. That scrutinizing gaze made one feel as if all disguises had been stripped away, standing naked before him. Li Meng even felt certain hidden desires within his heart begin to stir. However, his gaze only lingered on Li Meng for a moment before turning to Mr. Piano behind him. Phew! Li Meng, wearing a pair of red gloves, finally breathed a slight sigh of relief. He had made sufficient preparations for this gathering, and a well-timed self-hypnosis was an indispensable part of it. This included making himself appear more paranoid, cruel, and fanatical, closer to a true believer of the Creator. Noticing Li Meng's reaction, Mr. Piano introduced him. That is Mr. A powerful Biander and the convener of this secret gathering. After the two entered the room, the gatekeeper immediately closed the door. This was a relatively spacious villa hall, with gray-white gas pipes and wall lamps enclosed in metal grids installed along the surrounding walls. The slightly dim yellow gas lamps burned quietly, illuminating the entire hall. Some participants were like Mr. Piano, wrapped entirely in black robes with no information revealed. Some seemed to have used disguises but not completely, still revealing partial information. Others, like Li Meng, were neatly dressed as if attending a real evening party. What concerned Li Meng the most was that the number of people at this gathering was too high. Scattered about, there were a full 40 or 50 people, making the relatively spacious hall feel slightly crowded. After adjusting to the light of the gas lamps, Li Meng saw two blackboards standing at the very front of the hall, directly opposite the main door, with line after line of words in common Lonis written on them. Need one adult black spotted frog, price negotiable. Fruit of the Radiant Spirit Covenant Tree, 365 pounds. Emperor Russell's Notes, 3 pages, 20 pounds. 100 milliliters of Mirror Hedgehog Blood, 390 pounds. 1 deep patterned walnut, 5 pounds. 100 milliliters of Crevice Rock Water, 7 pounds. 1 sprig of Dragon Tooth Grass, 9 pounds. These prices were slightly cheaper than the gatherings Li Meng had participated in before. When there are enough participants, the goods are more complete and the prices aren't too outrageous. No wonder Miss Audrey used to keep sighing about how cheap things were. With the prices here as a comparison, I certainly can't make random offers at the Tarot Club anymore. But fortunately, knowledge is priceless. The young Miss Audrey does not yet have enough ability to distinguish which information is valuable and which is not. I wonder if the current Miss Justice has ever attended a gathering here. Li Meng looked all the way down. The prices were quite appropriate, looking like a real Biander gathering should. Often, because there are too few participants in Beander gatherings, there is no room to bargain for many materials. If you miss it, it might be for a lifetime, so many people have to tearfully pay high prices to get the materials they want. Infant's cry, flour, 200 pounds. Mummy powder, 10 grams, 5 pounds. Essential oil made from hornbeam, 5 milliliters, 19 pounds. Sequence 8 Sheriff Potion Formula, 450 pounds. Looking down the rows, half of these materials were familiar to Li Meng. Many were materials needed for Sequence 9 and Sequence 8 potion formulas, while others were common items for various Beander rituals. As for those he didn't recognize, Li Meng guessed from the prices that they were likely main potion materials needed for Sequence 7 or even Sequence 6. Formulas for sale were still very rare. That Sheriff formula, Li Meng remembered it was eventually obtained by Hugh Dilch. He could consider intercepting this deal and selling it to her in advance. Mr. Piano led Li Meng to a sofa in the corner of the hall and sat down, asking in a low voice. "How is it? Did you find what you wanted?" "Not yet, but I'm very satisfied with this gathering. There are many materials for sale, I think I can keep looking. If you have any needs, you can tell the attendant, they will take you and the seller to a private room for the transaction. The same goes for selling things, they will write it on that blackboard for you and then start inquiring. Do not try to cheat in transactions, Mr. A possesses the same ability as the old gentleman eye of wisdom to verify the authenticity of a deal." Mr. Piano pointed to a man not far away who was also wearing a black robe and a mask. "Those are Mr. A's attendant. Transactions usually go through them. Before a deal is reached, both parties can avoid direct contact. I know, almost all Beander gathering organizers have the ability to check the authenticity of items from both parties and guarantee the transaction. After all, Beander gatherings are anonymous transactions. Without a strong enough means of guarantee, no one would feel safe making a deal. It feels a bit like the dark web, only a sufficiently reputable currency can be used as an anonymous transaction intermediary in the dark web." At this moment, Mr. A's attendant walked over and said softly to the two of them. "You can write your needs on a piece of paper and give it to me, or you can go to the small room during the break later and write the items you wish to sell on the blackboard." Li Meng pulled out a note he had prepared long ago, folded it, and handed it to the attendant. The attendant went around, collected quite a few more notes, put them together, and handed them to a companion standing in front of the blackboard. This attendant, wearing glasses, transcribed the information from the notes onto the blackboard and read it aloud 3 times. Hearing the items Li Meng needed to buy, Mr. A called the attendant over with interest and gave a few instructions. Watching the attendant walk towards them, Li Meng knew that Mr. A had noticed him. He quickly adjusted his state and looked at the attendant. "Mr. A says he has the items you need and wants to conduct the transaction privately in a small room. Please follow me, sir." After speaking, he also made a gesture of invitation to Li Meng. Li Meng looked at Mr. Piano and nodded slightly, letting him wait here while he followed the attendant to a room beside the hall that looked like a living room. "It's finally here." While recalling the mental draft he had prepared, he observed the surroundings. Li Meng was actually a bit nervous for a moment. Coming out of the forsaken land of the gods, the route planned by Number 4 was to infiltrate the Aurora Order and use their identity as a cover to carry out even more secretive actions. But only now had he truly made contact with the Aurora Order. During this time, he had even personally killed a member of the Aurora Order. He didn't know if the true creator had seen it or if he cared. Chapter 106, Ill Intentions. The attendant gently pushed open the ajar door, made a gesturing motion to invite Li Meng in, and then turned to leave. Mr. A stood by the window, his large hood concealing his face. Only the rough outline of his features could be discerned through the shadows of the hood. The entire lounge had been cleaned thoroughly, only a single gas lamp burned quietly on the wall facing the door. "You need the head of a shadow ghost rabbit." Mr. A lifted his head slightly, allowing Li Meng to see his features clearly. It was a beauty that would make the vast majority of ladies and young misses in Backland feel envious. However, the sinister and cruel aura emanating from his entire being made this beauty feel greasy and malicious, like a venomous snake with a beautiful pattern. "Yes," Li Meng replied in a voice devoid of any emotion. Mr. A threw back the hood that covered his entire head, his greasy and sharp gaze scraping over Li Meng's body. A moment later, a gust of wind blew from the window, slamming the door shut. This shepherd raised his hands halfway in a gesture of open arms and began to chant in Hermes language in a low voice. Praise be to you, the Lord who created all things, the ruler behind the curtain of shadows. The Aurora Order's method of contact was certainly convenient, no one ever dared to infiltrate them in disguise. Without hesitation, Li Meng raised his hands halfway and skillfully followed along with the chant, his voice loud and firm. The degenerate nature of all living beings. Unlike ordinary prayers, using Hermes language to pray to the true creator had a direct and stable effect, immediately drawing the deity's gaze. Within the Aurora Order, the best way to distinguish loyalty was to pray to the true creator. Watching Li Meng finish the last line of the prayer, still standing there with a pious expression and completely unharmed, Mr. A nodded with satisfaction. As long as we are loyal to the great creator, do our best to spread the Lord's glory, and sacrifice ourselves for the Lord, we will receive God's gifts. At this point, Mr. A suddenly frowned, as if remembering something unpleasant, and then added. Since this is a Beander gathering, let us complete the transaction first. According to the normal price, a Sequence 7 Beander characteristic costs £800. Before Mr. A had even finished speaking, he pulled out a fist-sized, dried skull from beneath his voluminous black robes. Atop the skull were two upright, furry long ears. This is the head of a shadow ghost rabbit. Li Meng did not haggle. He briskly counted out 14 banknotes from his wallet and handed the rest to Mr. A. This was the full £1,000 he had withdrawn from Backland Bank. He had paid £50 to Mr. Piano and another £5 for the carriage fare, with the remaining £5 broken down into small change. In the blink of an eye, his wallet went from bulging to being completely flat. Seeing Li Meng put away the banknotes and the shadow ghost rabbit's head, Mr. A showed no intention of leaving. Instead, he looked at Li Meng with great interest. Do you know Gao Jia weak husband? Seeing the look of confusion on Li Meng's face, Mr. A added another sentence. That is the person sitting next to you, one of the shareholders of Backland Bank. Under Mr. A's greasy gaze, Li Meng felt as if a layer of goosebumps had broken out all over his body. Oh, he calls himself Mr. Piano. I don't know his true identity. You don't need to know too clearly, just maintain contact. The Lord's glory being spread in the world requires more lambs, and also more worldly wealth, to let the world understand the Lord's greatness. At this point, Mr. A took a portrait from his robes and handed it to Li Meng. A member of the demonist sect is attempting to approach Gao Jia weak husband to seek his wealth. This is intolerable. You need to be careful to remind him not to let him fall into the demoness's trap. Only our Aurora Order can possess this wealth. Taking the portrait from Mr. A's hand, Li Meng only took one glance before his heart began to beat rapidly. The person in the drawing had long, waterfall-like brown hair, a pair of clear and flawless brown eyes like a deer in the forest, and skin as fair and smooth as a newborn baby's. Even through the drawing, one could feel the woman's unique, demon-like temptation that combined mature charm with refined elegance. Most fatally, the angle of this portrait was very unique. Seen from the front, the woman's watery eyes seemed to be looking directly at the viewer, making one involuntarily fall into her temptation. He was all too familiar with this person. She was number 3006, who had entered Backland with him, and they had even spent several wonderful nights together on the ship. The kind of nights where not even a shadow could be seen. Li Meng wanted to suppress his momentary psychological fluctuation, but he quickly reacted, thinking that this did not fit the character of a believer of the true creator. He stared at the portrait as if entranced, until Mr. A coughed forcefully, only then waking from it. This drawing is too realistic. I mean, if it's just used to describe an appearance, there's actually no need to depict it so vividly. This was drawn using dream divination. Mr. A put away the portrait with satisfaction, very pleased with Li Meng's performance. You only need to tell him at the appropriate time that the demoness has ill intentions and is coveting his property. I think he should understand. No one can take away what I have set my eyes on. After leaving behind a sentence that sounded like both a threat and a warning, Mr. A put his hood back on and left the lounge. After watching Mr. A leave, Li Meng relaxed completely, only then realizing that his back was soaked with sweat. His pure cotton shirt was stuck clammily to his back, making him feel exceptionally uncomfortable, as if his whole body couldn't breathe. Among the mid-sequence powerhouses Li Meng had seen, Mr. A was the one with the strongest sense of oppression and threat. That unrestrained, overflowing spirituality combined with the madness brought by being a believer of the true creator had once made Li Meng feel that he had been exposed. But now Li Meng felt he might have been overthinking. As the head of the 22 oracles of the Aurora Order, being stationed in Backland, the capital of all capitals, with a status second only to the 5 highest-ranking saints, Mr. A was an outstanding figure among the oracles. He wouldn't care much about a low-sequence Beander like himself. As long as they praised the true creator together, they were good brothers of the Aurora Order. As for selling the Shadow Ghost Rabbit's head to him, it was even more reasonable. After all, if it were given as a reward or a blessing, Mr. A wouldn't have received those £800. Compared to himself, Mr. A was more interested in that wealthy man, Gao Jia weak husband, who was disguised as Mr. Piano. Li Meng walked out of the lounge and found Mr. Piano still sitting there with his eyes closed, resting. That calm and relaxed state made one feel that he hadn't come to attend a Beander gathering, but was out fishing. Seeing Li Meng approach, the gentleman opened his eyes, looked around, and asked casually, "Was the transaction successful?" Li Meng nodded and said with a slight sense of relief, "Yes, thank you for your guidance." "That's good. There's still an hour until the gathering ends. Do you want to leave now, or continue trading to see if there are any items worth buying?" Li Meng watched Mr. Piano close his eyes again after speaking, looking like he had no intention of leaving at all, so he also sat down nearby, watching the people coming and going at the gathering. "It's been released, please subscribe, ask for recommendation tickets, thank you all for your support." Chapter 107, Makeup. Li Meng looked at Mr. Piano, who had been sitting quietly beside him and even seemed a bit drowsy, and suddenly felt a strange sense of displacement. In both his past and present lives, he had seen people dozing off in class, at work, and during meetings, but this was truly the first time he had seen someone dozing off at a Beander gathering. It was as if this Mr. Piano had attended the Beander gathering for the sole purpose of getting a good night's sleep. However, through Mr. A's introduction, he somewhat understood this Mr. Gao Jia weak husband. As one of the shareholders of Backland Bank, he must attend meetings frequently. Perhaps to save time and become a master of time management, he had developed the habit of sleeping during meetings. After all, sitting monotonously every day and listening to one's income grow by thousands or tens of thousands of golden list, anyone would eventually get tired and feel sleepy. Moreover, this Mr. Piano didn't look young. It was quite reasonable for him to fall asleep due to a lack of energy. Time passed slowly amidst Li Meng's idle guesses. During this period, he found nothing worth taking action for, and Li Meng didn't want to make any extra moves that might expose his identity. About an hour later, Mr. A announced the end of the gathering. Watching everyone in the hall leave one after another, Li Meng nudged Mr. Piano, who was still lost in a sweet dream. The gentleman woke up slowly, looked around, wiped his drool, and asked Li Meng, "Is the meeting over?" This instantly familiar tone reminded Li Meng of those old-timers who couldn't fall asleep without a meeting before he transmigrated. "It's over," Li Meng answered somewhat weakly. Mr. Piano stood up, unhurriedly straightened his black robe, wiped away the drool, and smoothed out the creases to make them less noticeable. "Where do you live? Is it convenient to get back? I can have the driver drop you off on the way." "Thank you. Just drop me off at the nearest metro station." Since it was nearly 10 o'clock at night and Li Meng had never been here before, he didn't know if he could find a rental carriage. He could only go to the nearby metro station first and then transfer to get home. Of course, it was also because rental carriages here were too expensive and hard to find, often requiring a reservation. In Empress Borough, even if a family didn't have their own stable, several families would jointly hire a carriage for the long term. Carriage drivers soliciting business on the streets rarely appeared in Empress Borough. The two walked out the door. The many carriages parked at the entrance had already begun to start slowly, driving into the darkness. Li Meng followed Mr. Piano into the carriage, and the latter gave an instruction to the driver. "The nearest metro station." The driver hesitated for a moment and asked, "There are 2 metro stations about the same distance from here. One is in Hillsden District and the other is in the North District." "Which one?" Gao Jia weak husband glanced at Li Meng. Li Meng thought for a moment and told the driver. Go to Hillsden District. The driver gave an affirmative response, the whip cracked in the air with a crisp sound, and the carriage gradually vanished into the night. Looking at Gao Jia's weak husband, who had started dozing off again, Li Meng wondered if he should tell him that Mr. A was coveting his property. After thinking it over repeatedly, he felt he might be overthinking it. He didn't believe that these big bankers didn't have powerful Beander forces behind them. After all, in the eyes of a Beander, even the richest man in Backland, if he didn't have enough power to protect his wealth, a mere Sequence 9 marauder could make him go bankrupt in 3 months. For those with banks at home, their wealth was definitely beyond most people's imagination. Worrying about them himself was truly a waste of breath. Moreover, they weren't well acquainted, all their interaction stemmed from those 50 pounds. When he had time, he could contact number 3006 to ask what exactly was going on. If what Mr. A said was true, this number 3006 avatar's thinking was even clearer than his own. Having only been in Backland for half a month, she had already set her sights on a major tycoon in Backland, and it looked like there was a high probability of success, otherwise, it wouldn't have triggered Mr. A's alarm. When they reached the entrance of the Hillsden District metro station, Gao Jia's weak husband had already fallen asleep in the carriage. Li Meng didn't wake him, signaled the driver to stop by the roadside, and lightly jumped off the carriage. Under the crimson moonlight, Hillsden District was still as lively as ever. Pedestrians in groups of 2s and 3s wandered aimlessly on the streets, and various vendors by the roadside were shouting with all their might, showing no intention of sleeping early or waking up early. Li Meng bypassed the various stalls on the roadside, dodged a few skillful hands reaching for his pockets, and walked into the central garden of the street. There, thick chimneys were rapidly spewing black smoke, a testament to the achievements of Backland's industrial revolution. He turned his head to glance at the terraced houses in the distance and followed the garden stairs all the way down. Several people in various work uniforms were either lying or sitting on both sides of the metro station, holding rags and various tools, waiting for the people on the metro to get off to start their new business. A few older ladies even had half-length mirrors set up beside them, with a piece of cardboard stuck on top, with a few words written in Ruan language. Quick makeup. Clothing adjustment. Li Meng only took a glance, and that lady immediately spotted him. While waving her hand vigorously, she shouted loudly, "Sir, do you want some makeup? I'm a man, can you have some discernment?" Li Meng complained in his heart and immediately quickened his pace, preparing to go to the ticket window to buy a ticket and board the train. Beside the quick makeup lady, an old man shining shoes forcefully pushed down her waving arm and scolded loudly. "Stop stealing my business. What man wears makeup? This gentleman clearly wanted a shoe shine." "No, I don't." Li Meng walked even faster after hearing that. "Who says men don't wear makeup? Over in Empress Borough, many men wear makeup to attend various parties. If a noble lady takes a fancy to them, they'll be set for life. You know nothing about makeup, all you know is how to shine shoes. With your skills, a noble lady taking a fancy. Have you forgotten the time you almost poked out a lady's eye while doing her makeup? Bah! Have you forgotten the time you reached into a customer's pocket while shining their shoes and were beaten half to death? It was I who gave you a bowl of water. You call that water? It tastes worse than sewer water. Do you deserve clean water? Does water not cost money? You're lucky to have a bowl of foot-washing water to drink." Hearing the two argue more and more excessively, the nearby shoe shiners and makeup artists moved their stalls away from them, fearing they would affect their own business. Li Meng bought his ticket just before the metro started. He stepped into the carriage, and the heavy iron door slammed shut with a clang. The noise vanished instantly, leaving only the clattering sound of the train's wheels against the tracks as it moved. Chapter 108, Pomp. Hillsden District, 35 Borellis Street, a terraced house that looked unremarkable from the outside. In the prime real estate of Hillsden District, the price of a terraced house was enough to buy a luxury villa in the prime location of some remote city. And here, just renting it cost between £1 and £2 a week. Ordinary white-collar workers and the middle class absolutely could not afford such a house. They would rather take the subway for several hours every day and then walk for dozens of minutes to reach a decent office for work. Many were not even willing to have lunch here, bringing lunch boxes that were more convenient and cost almost nothing, just making do with a casual meal. Although they worked in Hillsden district and gave their lives to its prosperity, they never belonged here, and this place had no intention of leaving them a place to stand. Pomp, a middle-aged man dressed in a white formal suit with shoes and hair so glossy they could reflect a person's image, was standing by the window with a young girl, looking at the scenery. The girl wore a floral maxi dress. The gentle cool breeze blowing in through the window ruffled the stray hairs on her forehead, making her look even more delicate and pitiable under the dim indoor lighting. Pomp pointed out the window at a passerby who was also dressed in a formal suit and in a hurry, saying to the girl in a shrill voice, "Look at him." The girl timidly approached the window and saw the passerby through the crimson moonlight of the night and the gas street lamps. He skillfully bypassed the various stalls lined up along the road, dodged several hands reaching for his pockets, and walked into the central garden of the street, seemingly on his way to take the subway. "Look at him, he's quite something, isn't he? Those thieves are all experts around here, it's rare for outsiders passing near them not to lose something. And those street vendors, once they get a hold of you, they'll fleece you for all you're worth." Pomp grew more excited as he spoke, the oily sheen on his head becoming even brighter and smoother. The girl carefully took a step back to avoid his flying spittle. "He looks quite capable, doesn't he? Those thieves and vendors can't get his money. But what's the use of that?" Just as he was speaking, the passerby seemed to sense something and turned his head to glance near the house, but found nothing. "He's also quite good looking. Although I can't see clearly, I can feel it." Pomp's spittle flew everywhere, and the girl nodded vigorously. "But none of that matters. If he owned a house near the subway station like I do, he wouldn't have to squeeze onto the subway so late at night. Those thieves and vendors wouldn't dare target him, and he wouldn't even have to go out and work so hard, exhausted like a dog. And those who shine shoes or apply makeup at the subway station, they work hard from morning till night and can't even earn 2 souls. The most ridiculous thing is that they even try to learn from those thieves, only to get beaten until they're nearly breathless. Look at me, I make money easily every day just by lying down. A house in such a good location costs at least several £1,000s. I came to Backland and bought this house in just a few years. Don't listen to the rumors spread by those peasants from the countryside. In Backland, these things are very popular. Those nobles, you wouldn't believe the wild things they get up to." Pomp got more and more worked up, even starting to gesture with his hands. After meeting this girl at the Hillsden District Vegetable Market, he knew he could add another high-income source. Although the girl was unadorned, his experienced eyes immediately saw her potential. He was confident he could sell the girl for a higher price than before. Most importantly, her furrowed brows suggested she was inexperienced, and she looked foolish and easy to control. This was truly a blessing from the Evernight goddess. Right pointing arrow. Whenever he thought of this, he would sincerely thank his deceased parents and the Evernight goddess they believed in. Although he rarely went to church, he now felt that the Evernight goddess was still protecting him. If he used this girl well, he might be able to trade this terraced house for a large villa. He waved his hands excitedly, his greasy eyes wandering over the girl, from her chest to her waist, from her floral dress to her exposed calves, and finally at the old canvas boots she was wearing, which were almost worn through. "Look at you, those boots should have been replaced long ago. A girl should have at least a few pairs of leather boots for going out. And this dress is too tacky, the clients won't like it. Also, those cheap cosmetics on your face can't be used, they'll offend the clients." As Pomp spoke, he reached his hand toward the girl's chest. "Come, I'll help you change your clothes and put on some proper makeup, and you'll discover your true charm." The girl quietly moved back, causing Pomp to grab thin air. Pomp didn't care, he had encountered this many times and was always very experienced in dealing with the weak. After all, the girl had come to him on her own, so she would definitely yield in the end. It was just that for the moment, her mind couldn't quite wrap around it. This kind of playing hard to get final stubbornness even made Pomp a little excited. "I have many fashionable hairstyles and clothing styles here, we can take our time choosing." Pomp didn't reach out again but took out a thick stack of photos from a wall cabinet in the corner of the room. The girls in the photos were all wearing beautiful but revealing clothes, with makeup so heavy it was exaggerated, showing uniform and wooden smiles. However, deep in their eyes, which should have held smiles, was death-like despair and pain. The girl in the floral dress watched Pomp proudly flipping through the photos and introducing their happy lives, but her eyes grew deeper and deeper, as if anger was slowly brewing. Watching Pomp flip through the last photo, the girl asked in an indifferent voice Pomp had never heard before. Do you have family in Backland? Family. Pomp was momentarily stuck by this question that felt like a brain teaser. His years of experience mingling with women led him to the most appropriate answer. From now on, we are family. I am your family. Then what do you believe in? Dealing with women had always been Pomp's specialty, and it was an important means for him to survive in this business. Those girls who were often unhappy because of work would frequently say things that were incomprehensible to normal people, but he could correctly read the meaning behind them and coax others into working themselves to death with just a few words. I believe in the Evernight goddess. She is so beautiful, kind, and gentle, you are practically her incarnation in the mortal world. The girl's lips twitched as if she were amused, but she ultimately held it in. Then, have you had dinner? Pomp finally sensed that something was wrong with the atmosphere. Although girls cried, made scenes, threw tantrums, and had all sorts of mysterious moods, it was ultimately to gain some small advantage, which he could handle with a few words. But the lady before him did not radiate the kind of charm a woman should have, instead, it seemed like genuine killing intent. Chapter 109, Expressions. My name is AFIA. Have you had dinner yet? The girl approached Pomp step by step, her voice becoming increasingly soft and ethereal. Pomp felt his brain failing him. Why was she asking about dinner? Why did she repeat her name? Why did he sense a murderous intent emanating from her? In this moment of life and death, his mind began to race. For a long time, he had been the one deceiving and toyed with women, using honeyed words to keep them in the palm of his hand. But at the end of the day, he was still a man. This woman might have been sent by an enemy, or perhaps she was a girl he had once trafficked. Regardless, he was still a man. In a fight, taking down a woman should be easy. Just as he summoned his courage to think of a way out of this predicament, a dazzling metallic reflection flashed in the corner of his eye. Out of nowhere, a sharp knife appeared in Afia's hand. Pomp's nose could even catch the faint, fishy scent lingering on the blade. If there's too much food in the stomach, when I slice through the muscle and blood vessels under the abdominal skin, the stomach bag will burst. The smell is quite unpleasant. I've been gutting fish for many years, I often get my hands dirty. In that instant, Pomp broke down. He finally understood that the woman before him was by no means a normal person. Do you know why I came? Our builds are very similar. Your skin, it will surely fit me perfectly. Pomp watched in despair as the woman drew closer, but his body lacked even the strength to resist. At the very end, he heard the sounds of prayer, drifting from both near and far. He knew they were not meant to send him to the Evernight heaven. We are born of chaos. Within it lies endless silence and darkness. Yet we only know how to hypocritically praise the fireflies within this chaos. But we have forgotten the unshakable darkness of the universe. The sounds of prayer gradually ceased. Pomp stood up once more, still wearing that white formal suit. There wasn't a single stain on the pristine white shirt. He frowned as he looked at a skinless, humanoid mass of flesh on the floor nearby, its exposed muscles still twitching intermittently. Dead after all. Humans really are different from fish. A cold female voice came from Pomp's mouth. He set down all the tools, walked to the dressing table in the corner, and slowly sat down. There stood an exquisitely carved half-length vanity mirror. Facing his reflection, Pomp began to practice various expressions. From smiles to tears, from joy to anger, wrinkles began to appear on the skin of his face following his movements. He tirelessly smoothed out the wrinkles and resumed his practice until, finally, all his facial expressions became extremely subtle and natural, like a stern leader facing the public. When he finally managed a wretched smile in the mirror, Pomp stood up with satisfaction and gave the mirror one last look. A green flame roared atop the skinless mass of flesh, emitting a pungent sulfurous odor. In the blink of an eye, the meat was reduced to a pile of ash. He pushed open the window. The cool night breeze of Backland blew into the room, swirling around and quickly sweeping the pile of black ash clean. The entire room became pristine and fresh once more. After transferring between the metro and a carriage, it was nearly midnight by the time Li Meng returned to No. 7 Iron Gate Street. Snoring sounds drifted from number 9521's room. Out of habit, Li Meng glanced at number 3333's room. The door was open, and the occupant had clearly not returned. Ever since they had dined together at the Horneckus Highland Flavor restaurant, she had claimed she was going out to find a job, and Li Meng hadn't seen her since. According to number 9521, number 3333 seemed very busy, only returning a few times. He had no idea where she spent the rest of her time. As for number 9521, after a period of hard study, the appraiser potion had begun to digest. However, the acting for an appraiser was not easy. It required actual contact with an identification of various mystical items possessing Beyonder powers to complete the digestion. This placed very high demands on the resources available to the appraiser. Most non-official Beyonders of the Savant pathway would easily get stuck at this step. But number 9521 wasn't worried at all. The current days of not having to work were enough to satisfy him. As for faster potion digestion, finding new formulas, or advancing to a higher sequence, he currently had no such thoughts. Hillsden District, 53 South Wales Street. A black carriage circled the street once before finally coming to a silent halt. As Gao Jia weak husband, dressed in a black hooded robe, stepped off the carriage, a tall, thin butler hurried forward to meet him. He skillfully took the black robe from Gao Jia weak husband and leaned in, whispering in a voice only the two of them could hear. "The madam has already retired for the night." Gao Jia weak husband turned to glare at him, his previous drowsiness completely gone. He whispered back in the same low tone, "I'm sleeping in the study tonight. Is everything prepared?" "Master, it has long been prepared. We were just waiting for you." Gao Jia weak husband's face had just begun to show a hint of joy when he suddenly remembered something and said in a slightly stern tone, "Bart, don't be ridiculous." Butler Bart merely chuckled and said nothing more. The two traversed various hallways, arriving at the study which was far from the main hall and close to the garden. "Have you found out where that woman came from?" "Master, we've checked. She did indeed live in Bayham, on Sour Lemon Street. However, her reputation there doesn't seem very good. Pirates were often seen entering and leaving her villa. Perhaps that's where her money came from." Gao Jia weak husband frowned deeply, and after a moment, he asked with some doubt, "Is this information reliable? Are there witnesses who can testify?" Butler Bart pulled an opened letter from his jacket pocket and handed it to Gao Jia weak husband. "This is the letter sent back from there. It says this woman has some fame in Bayham and even has a special connection with a certain bishop of the Church of Storms." Gao Jia weak husband did not open the letter to read it. Instead, he looked into the butler's eyes and asked with a touch of authority, "Then what do you think her purpose is in approaching me?" "Master, that's a very strange question. Isn't it obviously for the money?" Gao Jia weak husband suddenly grew angry, his tone becoming even heavier. "Bart, you've served me for 30 years, haven't you?" The tall, thin butler Bart immediately straightened his back, his voice full of pride. "It has been 37 years. That's 5 years longer than the madam." Gao Jia weak husband didn't look at him but continued to ask, "Then why do you think the madam married me?" Butler Bart's voice wasn't loud, yet it reached Gao Jia weak husband's ears with exceptional clarity. "Perhaps because she was already 25 and still unmarried." Chapter 110. Not good at manual labor. Li Meng walked along Iron Gate Street for a long time before finally finding a heavy, round cast iron manhole cover in an inconspicuous corner of the main street. In the year 1337, a far-reaching epidemic occurred in Backland. After a long period of death and lockdowns, George III finally made up his mind to learn from Emperor Russell and launch the Patriotic Health Movement. The core measure was the construction of this complete and advanced sewer system, which eliminated the scenes of sewage flowing everywhere in Backland and thoroughly cured Backland's water problems. Because the plague was powerful enough, this sewer system even surpassed its predecessor, exceeding the Trier sewer system personally designed and built by Emperor Russell in terms of scale and design philosophy. It was wide enough for several people to walk side by side inside, becoming the final shelter for many of Backland's homeless. Li Meng glanced left and right, and after making sure no one was around, he pulled down his hat. He pried open the manhole cover with force, held his breath, and climbed down the vertical metal ladder. 10 seconds later, Li Meng's feet touched the ground. Although he was wearing a raincoat and thick-soled boots, the unique greasy and filthy sensation of the sewers still stimulated his entire body through his soles, causing fine goosebumps to break out all over him. Li Meng stood at the sewer entrance for a while, letting his eyes adjust slightly to the dim environment. A gust of cool wind blew from the end of the sewer, and the pungent odor almost made Li Meng vomit. As the dark side of a city, the sewers truly reflect the current state of development in different areas. In Empress Borough in the North District, even the sewers are cleaned spotlessly, serving as a paradise for the homeless, where one can even find many foods that could be called delicious. As for places like the Backland Bridge District, the cleaning of the sewers mainly relies on the annual flood of the Tasok River. The more the flood overflows, the cleaner the sewers become. Fortunately, the flooding in July made the smell of the Iron Gate Street sewers acceptable. Li Meng half covered his nose, enduring the pungent smell while recalling the address left by the apothecary Duckwell, slowly searching through the sewers. At the last Beander gathering hosted by the old gentleman Eye of Wisdom, Duckwell and Li Meng reached an agreement. Li Meng paid him £50 in advance, and he left an address to meet Li Meng. After more than half an hour of fumbling around, Li Meng finally found a piece of cultivated land at the sewer's outlet into the river. The garbage accumulated in the sewers for many years, combined with the silt brought by the Tasok River, made this black earth look very fertile. Since vegetables can be grown on rooftops, it's also quite reasonable to plant some herbs in the sewers. At the end of the black earth, near the water outlet, stood a fat man also wearing a raincoat and rain boots, along with a mask. He was laboriously trying to distinguish various herb seeds by the faint light from the sewer entrance. Beside him were also scattered various farming tools like hoes, rakes, pitchforks, wooden buckets, and water ladles. Seeing Li Meng approach, the fat man's eyes were filled with pleasant surprise. "I didn't expect you to actually come. I've been waiting for hours." The fat Duckwell put down the seeds in his hand and ran over quickly. "Planting medicine in these sewers is really not a job for humans. Actually, I just wanted to make a joke. I didn't expect you to really come." "No, actually I just wanted to see if there were any valuable medicinal materials." Li Meng also had a smile on his face as he said cordially. "When it comes to transactions and friends, I have always been very sincere." Li Meng lowered his right hand that was covering his nose and found that the smell here was no longer so unpleasant, as if it had been cleared by some means. "I sprinkled rosemary here. For people like you who aren't sensitive to smells, you shouldn't be able to sense the odor anymore." Duckwell introduced his achievement with a hint of pride. "It smells very effective," Li Meng said calmly, quietly moving his body a bit closer to the river outlet. "If it were a bit earlier, I would have known some believers of the primordial moon if you were looking for them, and I could even have introduced you. But now they've inexplicably become our enemies and have started hunting me." Duckwell's chubby face clearly twitched for a moment. I think I know why, but I don't think it's a good idea to tell you." Li Meng suppressed the urge to tell him the truth and asked in a curious tone. "Can they still be found now?" "I don't know about that, but for the sake of those £150, I can give it a try." The fat man's eyes darted around as he suddenly changed the subject. "Before that, can you help me plant all these seeds? And look after the herb field while you're at it. When these herbs are sold, I'll give you 5% of the profit." "Friend, I'm not an adventurer in those third-rate games who, after just completing a dangerous mission to assassinate an enemy leader, has to help an old lady who's a terrible cook find her lost dog. The most ridiculous part is that the rewards for these two missions are actually not that far apart. Moreover, the bounty for this task of yours is too insincere, there isn't even the sound of a gold coin. I'm sorry, the Beander pathway I'm on is not good at manual labor, and I'm even less proficient at dealing with things like plants." "That's a pity." The fat man's face was full of regret. "Actually, I'm not good at farming either. The Beander sequence I've mastered is called apothecary. Originally, I only needed to sell medicine. But the effects were too good, and I accidentally got noticed by some people with ulterior motives. I only recently moved, and all my herbs and customers were lost, so I have to start over in Backland. Although being an apothecary makes money, it's all hard-earned money. If I rely on buying medicinal materials and processing them myself, I can only accumulate pound by pound, which isn't enough for expenses at all. I remember you sold over £100 worth of potions in a single Beander gathering. Hearing this, Li Meng couldn't help but interrupt and ask back. Why plant them in the sewers? Can't you find a place in the suburbs? It looks too dirty here, won't the potions produced be poisonous? Speaking of being poisonous, the fat man suddenly perked up and began to explain disdainfully. A large part of the formulas of Mastered comes from the primordial moon and her believers. Many materials can only grow in dark and damp places. The sewers are a very suitable environment. The sewers in the Backland Bridge district are especially suitable. Look at all this garbage and thick silt. That's the best soil for medicinal herbs to grow. Unfortunately, there are too many beasts in the sewers, and homeless people often come to destroy things. A lot of herbs get damaged, it's good if I can harvest even half. At this point, Li Meng suddenly thought of number 9521, he would be perfect for this. Though it would be hard and tiring, as an archaeologist, Backland sewers could be considered a decade-old antiquity. He could digest his potion while working and earn some money on the side. But he would wait until after he settled the matter with the tumbleweed. Chapter 111, A Seer for a Lifetime. Faced with Li Meng's firm refusal, Duckwell finally gave up on the idea of having him manage this sewer herb field together. To have an angel's avatar, the Tarot Club's hanged man, crawling around in the sewers every day, what a disgrace. If Mr. Fool found out, how embarrassing would that be? However, Li Meng also stated that after this matter was successful, he could introduce someone to come and develop this forgotten treasure trove in Backland. In Backland, where every inch of land is worth its weight in gold, how could such a massive waste be tolerated? It's just a bit dirty, a bit smelly, and a bit tiring. Number 9521 would surely be up to the task. After we separated from the followers of the primordial moon, they began to attack us, but most of them didn't take serious action. Only a very few have been persistently hunting us down. At this point, Li Meng heard a hint of melancholy in Duckwell's voice. I know the address of one of them. You can go look for them. If that doesn't work, we'll think of something else. Of course, don't mention my name. Pritz Harbor, White Rose District, Surrey Street, Crawford Manor. Look for Madame Lola. Li Meng watched as Duckwell's expression gradually dimmed and his voice grew low. By the way, check on her for me and see how she's doing. Climbing out of the sewer, Li Meng checked the time, it was already 1 in the afternoon. Coincidentally, the 100 milliliters of blood of the ghost shark sold to Alger also needed to be traded at Pritz Port, so the two tasks could be handled together. At yesterday afternoon's Tarot Club, Li Meng spent £420 to buy the ghost shark's blood from Miss Justice. The current Miss Justice had already digested a significant portion of the spectator potion and learned how to bargain, forcefully raising the price of the ghost shark's blood from £400 to £420. Li Meng was noncommittal about this, he had only spent a bit more money, while Mr. Fool had yet to earn a single penny. Thinking this way, he immediately felt balanced. According to the method agreed upon above the grey fog, this money was transferred to the account under Audrey's name after the Tarot Club ended. As for the ghost shark's blood, Audrey would store it in a safe at the Lowen Bank of Business and Development in the Hillsden district. Li Meng would then use the password she provided to open the safe and retrieve the blood of the ghost shark. This way, the two parties in the transaction didn't have to meet directly or even know who the other was. Immediately after the Tarot Club ended, Li Meng transferred the money to Miss Justice. According to their agreement, she was to deliver the goods within 3 days. He closed the sewer manhole cover, took off his raincoat and rain boots, and had a late lunch at a small roadside restaurant. The restaurant owner proactively gave him a 50% discount, only asking him to take his tray and eat in a sheltered spot outside the restaurant, even giving him the tray for free. Above the grey fog, Klein finally waited for that crimson star to begin expanding, heard an extremely faint prayer, and saw the teenager's tragic yet resilient past. After a period of hard study, he had mastered the ancient dragon language used by the boy. This was partly due to his amazing linguistic talent. Before he transmigrated, the original owner of this body had studied ancient Hermes language and Jotun for 3 years. By simply associating and extending his knowledge, he could guess the meaning of a word in ancient dragon language. On the other hand, it was because of his extremely secret wish. Through several observations of the supplicant, he felt the other party might be in a particularly secret and strange place, likely possessing knowledge and information unknown to everyone else. The sooner he brought this person in, the more he could offset Mr. Hanged Man's information advantage in the Tarot Club. Even though Mr. Fool was prepared, the things recounted by the youth before him, named Derek Berg, were far beyond his imagination. The sun disappeared from the sky, the clouds were torn open, lightning and thunder became the masters, and monsters hidden in the depths of the darkness suddenly appeared. They were so terrifying, so unimaginable, that cities were destroyed one after another. Humanity's age of profound darkness had arrived. In this world, there actually existed a place without sun or moon, only darkness and lightning. The forsaken land of the gods, claimed by those lunatics of the Aurora Order, actually existed. The Lord who created all things, the omnipotent and omniscient God. Could this be describing the true creator of the Aurora Order? Sequence 9, Secret Supplicant, Sequence 8, Whisperer, Sequence 7, Shadow Ascetic, Sequence 6, Rose Priest, Sequence 5, Shepherd. The Aurora Order actually possesses such powerful sequences. And that mysterious city of silver has endured in the age of profound darkness for 2,582 years. The residents of the city of silver all turn into evil spirits after death, and the evil spirits transformed from beyonders are even more bizarre, terrifying, and difficult to deal with. The residents of the city of silver must have their lives ended by someone of the same bloodline when they are about to die. The city of silver has 3 demon hunters, 2 of the most promising, guardians, and 1 shepherd, 3 high-sequence powerhouses. Demigod-level powerhouses. Any one of them alone could wipe out the Tarot Club hundreds of times. Listening to the youth's narration, Klein felt a wave of guilt, but Mr. Fool, sitting at the long bronze table, still rested his chin on his hands, maintaining a relaxed posture as if saying, "I'm listening." The youth's wish was to become the sun, and there happened to be such a card in the tarot deck. Without even introducing the naming rules for Tarot Club members, Klein directly named the youth Sun, and severed the connection, letting him return to the forsaken land of the gods. It wasn't that he didn't want to get more information from the youth, but his spirituality could no longer support him continuing. The information the youth had already disclosed was enough for him to awe everyone in the Tarot Club. After all, in the kingdom of Loan, the forsaken land of the gods was still a legend. Aside from the lunatics of the Aurora Order, few would believe it. Although Mr. Hanged Man is well informed, he certainly wouldn't know about the forsaken land of the gods. I can use this to once again demonstrate Mr. Fool's profound knowledge. And while I'm at it, I can earn some pocket money from Miss Justice. Klein had already become an official Nighthawk, earning £6 a month. However, as his consumption upgraded, his expenses also increased. Not to mention he had now completely digested the seer potion and would soon need to prepare for the clown potion. If the church couldn't provide enough materials, or if he failed their inspection, he would have to prepare the funds for all the material purchases himself. Relying on that meager salary to buy materials, he would only be a seer for a lifetime, and in the end, he wouldn't even compare to Miss Justice. No, he absolutely couldn't let that happen. Miss Justice was a spectator. If her sequence was higher than his, she could very likely see through his disguise or even recognize his real-world identity. The consequences would be disastrous. For now, Sun seemed relatively simple. With a little guidance, he would surely play a role no less significant than Mr. Hanged Man in the Tarot Club. I still have room to maneuver. Chapter 112, The Primordial Moon Really Knows How to Nurture People. 10 o'clock in the morning, Backland Railway Station. Li Meng stepped onto the train bound for Pritzport right on time. He wore a gray high-collared trench coat and a semi-tall silk top hat, with a gray mask covering most of his face. Under the early August sun, amidst the bustling crowd, he appeared slightly conspicuous. After finishing his rest yesterday afternoon, he had gone to Hillsden District to find the Loan Bank of Business and Development. Under the supervision of a professional manager and 2 security guards armed with steam rifles, he retrieved the blood of the ghost shark from a safe in the bank's basement. Through the manager's slightly boastful introduction, he learned that this 20-centimeter square locker cost at least £2 a month in rent. Even if used for only 1 day, it was charged as a full month, with no refunds. It seemed Miss Justice had paid an extra £2 for him. He would pay her back at the Tarot Club later. The sea of books on Taiwan Novel Network is vast, choose as you wish at one. Oh, you can only make big money if you don't sweat the small stuff. Li Meng kept his hands in his pockets, appearing very relaxed, but his mind was highly focused, alert to anyone approaching him. In the hidden pocket on the left of his trench coat was the blood of the ghost shark he retrieved yesterday. In the right pocket was the dried adult tumbleweed he bought from Muriel. In the wallet at his chest was the £200 processing fee he prepared to pay Lola. In theory, he could pay the next fee with the money gained from trading the blood of the ghost shark, but Li Meng wasn't sure if it would be successful on the first try. To be safe, he had withdrawn the money and brought it along. As for things like bank transfers, it was the first transaction for both parties, and they hadn't reached that level of trust yet. Stepping out of the train station, Li Meng hired a rental carriage nearby and headed to the Warrior and Sea bar on Pelican Street in the White Rose district. The transaction went exceptionally smoothly. Upon hearing that the items belonged to the captain, Williams, the owner of the Warrior and Sea bar, picked up the bottle containing the blood of the ghost shark, gave it a slight shake, and readily paid Li Meng the money. The whole process took less than 10 minutes, so quick that Li Meng hadn't even finished the glass of Lanty proof he was holding. £720 thus entered Li Meng's wallet. Subtracting the £20 commission for Mr. Locke and the £420 cost for Miss Justice, he still made a profit of £280. Calculated this way, it was truly a huge profit. However, Miss Justice had merely poured a bit out from a large bottle in her family's treasury, so her cost was almost negligible. By that logic, she earned even more than he did. As for Mr. Alger, after getting the blood of the ghost shark, he would surely be able to promote to Sequence 7, Seafarer. He could then do better in the very promising industry of piracy and bring more wealth to the Church of Storms. He could write a letter to Mr. Locke, asking him to keep in contact with Alger. Once Alger promoted to a higher sequence, he could even sell formulas to him. Scholar's book number 9998 is truly a treasure, his early development would depend on it. Sari Street, White Rose District. Li Meng looked at the slightly dilapidated manor before him. After hesitating for a moment, he stepped forward and gently rang the slightly rusted doorbell. After waiting patiently at the door for over 10 minutes, the dilapidated wooden door creaked open. A maid in her 40s stood at the entrance, sized Li Meng up, and asked very warily, "Who are you? What are you here for?" Her voice sounded like she was interrogating a criminal. Prepared as always, Li Meng pulled out several pages covered in writing and handed them to the maid. Right pointing arrow. I'm illiterate. I'll take these to the mistress to see. After the maid finished speaking, she didn't even give Li Meng a second glance before slamming the door shut with a bang. This is a bit much. A few minutes later, the door opened again. This time, it wasn't the maid but a young lady. With just one look, Li Meng suddenly understood where the fat Duckwell's melancholy mood came from. The lady before him had features as exquisite as if they were carved. Her entire body was full of curves, and a surging vitality was ready to burst forth, vividly and clearly defining the meaning of sexy. Without a doubt, this was that Lady Lola. The primordial moon really knows how to nurture people. In his heart, Li Meng suddenly understood those who believed in the primordial moon a little better. Although everyone has various ideals, a healthy body is a common wish for everyone. The vitality of life, that kind of body full of power, is a desire everyone craves but finds hard to obtain. And the primordial moon could provide this most precious vitality. This attracted countless men keen on certain abilities and women pursuing a beautiful physique. Li Meng did not doubt that if Duckwell were given enough time, he too would become a faithful believer of the primordial moon. It was simply that just as he entered the Beander world, the Life Council had split, leaving him no time to realize the greatness of the primordial moon. Seeing the man before her seemingly lost in thought, the young Lola habitually gave a light cough. Her slightly husky voice added a few more points to her sexiness. "Where did you find these?" She waved the pages in her hand and made a gesture for him to enter. Realizing he had just been dazing, Li Meng followed the lady into the slightly dilapidated manor with a hint of embarrassment. "The channel through which I obtained it is not convenient for me to disclose for now. This is a very useful ritual that can repair and increase the spirituality of certain items. I hope to strike a deal. Use the complete process of this ritual to exchange for one opportunity to hold the ritual. To cover his embarrassment, Li Meng began to introduce the creature growth spell and the specific details of the trade. I think this will be very helpful for you as well. Anyone can feel the effect of this ritual. Li Meng followed Lady Lola through the overgrown garden. Along the way, he tried his best to admire the surrounding scenery to avoid focusing his attention on the lady's back. The two walked to a building that looked like a storage room, and Lola suddenly stopped. Your request is reasonable, but I want to know why you found this place and your true identity. Maintaining sufficient vigilance against strangers is a Beander's instinct, not to mention that I am a person with very strong curiosity. Lola turned her head, her gray pupils staring straight at Li Meng, as if trying to see the deepest secrets in his heart through his eyes. I obtained your contact information through a trade at a Beander gathering. You should be familiar with this kind of trade, both parties are anonymous. My trade content was, find a believer of the primordial moon of at least sequence 9, which cost me 150 pounds. As for my true identity, I think it's best you don't know, otherwise, it would be dangerous for both of us. Actually, I do know the identity of the person who sold me the contact information, but I'm not really lying, since everything I said is true. Facing Lola's emotionless eyes, Li Meng felt a rare sense of guilt. Chapter 113, Giants and Maggots. Lola pushed open the wooden door of the storage room, and a choking stench rushed out. It was the smell of furniture beginning to rot after being left in a house filled with items but uninhabited and untended for years. Your creature growth spell is of great significance to me. I must perform it at the altar of the deity. Do you need to participate as well? Li Meng touched the HLKY necklace hanging around his neck, feeling it was worth taking a gamble. Back in the forsaken land of the gods, the HLKY necklace seemed less useful compared to the scholar's book and the shepherd's gloves. But now that Li Meng was starting to come into contact with various evil gods, he was increasingly seeing the power of this sealed artifact personally crafted by Emperor Russell. Through the HLKY necklace, he could filter out the mental pollution from the primordial moon. Even if Lola had other tricks, his coordination with the shepherd's gloves number 9998 would be enough to handle it. Most importantly, if he didn't follow along and she ran off, he would have no way of finding her. I hope to witness this ritual in person. Lola didn't say anything, appearing completely unsurprised by Li Meng's choice. She fumbled around the floor of the room for a moment and found a pitch-black iron ring. Grabbing it with both hands, the muscles on her arms bulged high as she gave a sudden pull, and a piercing sound of metal grinding against metal rang in Li Meng's ears. This Lola is at least a sequence 8, beast tamer. A sequence 9 apothecary wouldn't have this kind of strength, she might even be a sequence 7 vampire. Looking at the iron plate, which was a full centimeter thick, Li Meng felt his eyelids twitch. This iron plate was visually about 50 centimeters square. Even if made of cast iron, it would weigh nearly a ton. He might not even be able to move it using the wind-blessed sole on his gloves. This kind of mechanical design directly discouraged any Beander without enough strength. It could be called violent secrecy. A large piece of iron plate was forcibly pulled open, revealing a pitch-black tunnel. Lola fished out a torch from the pile of junk, lit it with a lighter, and walked down the stairs revealed by the opening step by step. This was a narrow underground passage. Due to lack of maintenance, many parts had begun to collapse. Droplets of water from the ceiling dripped into the puddles below, making it easy to accidentally step into muddy water. Fortunately, the ventilation inside the tunnel was decent, so it didn't feel stuffy. The tunnel meandered and twisted with many forks, quickly causing Li Meng to lose his sense of direction and forget where he was. Lola led the way with the torch. The two walked for a full half-hour before seeing the end of the tunnel, a wooden door that had already begun to rot. Unknowingly, these things have started to rot. Lola switched the torch to her left hand and gently stroked the wooden door with her right. It was back when I had just taken the potion. I was so excited I couldn't sleep for days and insisted on going out to explore. To stop that impulse, my teacher made me dig a secret passage here. I dug for 3 whole years. I didn't expect the day would come when it would be used again. Your teacher probably didn't master the acting method either. Making an apothecary dig a tunnel is certainly a unique way to digest a potion. While Lola murmured to herself, she gently pushed the wooden door. The rotten door fell over as soon as her hand touched it, revealing a spiral staircase leading upward. The two slowly ascended the stairs, and the end was also sealed by an iron plate. Just as Lola was about to push the iron plate open, Li Meng stepped ahead of her. "Let me do it." Lola had probably seen many such scenes. She didn't speak, but silently brought the torch closer to the iron plate. While speaking, Li Meng had already quietly activated the wind-blessed soul on the shepherd's gloves. 9998. Illusory fish scales emerged from his body and condensed on his arms. On the way there, he had estimated his own strength and felt it necessary to try. It was both to verify his power and to show it to Lola to ensure their future dealings. With a piercing creak, the iron plate was slowly pushed open, revealing an exit also about 50 centimeters square. Li Meng was the first to pass through the exit to the ground, and Lola followed with the torch. This was an extremely dark room. The light of the setting sun passed through the translucent glass on the roof, becoming as crimson and dim as the moon, making the room's lighting like a night without lamps. Lola used the torch to light several candles hanging on the walls. The white flames danced cheerfully, and the room suddenly became a bit clearer. The place they came out of was in a corner to the right of the room's main door. The main door was tightly closed. Li Meng pushed it, but it seemed to be locked from the outside. "Don't bother. This is our ritual hall. Outsiders are not allowed to know its specific location. You can try to use mysticism for divination, but you must be prepared to face the deity directly. The ritual you possess is very important to me, which is why I didn't hesitate to expose that tunnel. But if you still want to try to learn more of our secrets, then I can only say I'm sorry." Lola spoke unhurriedly, her voice full of pressure and determination. "No, I'm just curious. Anyone in a strange place will always be curious. I imagine you're no exception. Can we begin the trade now?" Li Meng had already thought of his words, and his voice was equally firm. "Open black lens bracket, close black lens bracket. I am indeed someone with very strong curiosity. I've also been through countless explorations and narrow escapes. That's why I'm willing to trade with you. It's actually quite risky. Because of that, I understand your thoughts. All right. Give me the complete ritual information and the materials to be repaired." "I'll prepare. It's 4 p.m. now, the ritual can only be held after the crimson moon rises." Long before coming, Li Meng had copied the complete ritual onto several sheets of paper. What he had given Lola before was only a part of it, mainly describing the ritual's effects but lacking the implementation details. But now, since the other party had brought him to this place, she should be sincere. Li Meng took out the remaining sheets of information from his breast pocket with his left hand, while his right hand activated the hypnotist soul on the glove, triggering the ability of judgment of lies. "I hope you can complete the ritual as soon as possible so I can get what I want. I cannot guarantee the ritual's effect. After all, this is my first time performing such a ritual. This is the temple of the primordial moon. I hope you maintain sufficient reverence." Lola's voice was devoid of any tone. Li Meng didn't even need judgment of lies to know she wasn't lying. After taking the information, she stood in place and began to flip through the documents. Li Meng, meanwhile, walked around the room, hoping to familiarize himself with the place as quickly as possible. After all, in the original work, the primordial moon was one of the top evil gods, and its followers were famous for being cruel and cunning. This seemed to be the interior of a cathedral. Its area was vast, and due to insufficient lighting, Li Meng couldn't even see its full extent. Stone pillars, each a full meter in diameter, rose from the ground, supporting a heavy and magnificent dome. Directly opposite the room's entrance, a giant red moon was enshrined, floating eerily in the air and emitting a hazy crimson glow. Under the illumination of the red moon, Li Meng saw beneath it a pool filled with red liquid. Judging by the pungent smell coming from it, it was definitely not ordinary dye. The walls around the room were covered with twisted and indescribable symbols that would plunge anyone who looked at them into deep mental pollution. Li Meng avoided these and looked toward the brighter spots where sunlight was entering from above. At the edge of the dome, there were 12 brightly colored paintings that looked relatively normal, seemingly the work of a human painter. These paintings were enormous. Even from dozens of meters high, Li Meng could still clearly see their content. Directly opposite the entrance, there was a painting of a giant, ugly lump of flesh, with swarms of maggot-like things desperately tearing and biting at it. It was clear that the painter had excellent artistic skills. Even though it was just a chunk of meat painted on a wall, Li Meng could feel the pain of it being bitten. These maggots emitted a translucent glow from their entire bodies, looking both holy and evil, like a combination of angels and devils. In the painting to the right, the protagonist had changed into a strangely shaped giant creature. It looked somewhat human, but its body was covered in slimy tentacles and spherical eyes. Those tentacles were writhing forcefully, seemingly trying to pull the maggots out of its body and crush them to death. But those maggots were no pushovers either. Even when grasped, they bit down hard on the giant's body and wouldn't let go. Several that were crushed exploded with white slurry, coating the giant's skin and staining its body with many white patches. In the next painting to the right, the giant seemed unable to hold on. All its tentacles were bitten off, and it knelt on the ground letting out a painful wail. Even though it was just a picture, one could still feel the giant's despair and agony. And those translucent insects continued to chase and bite the giant relentlessly, with no intention of letting it go. In the fourth painting on the right, the giant had disappeared. Those translucent insects seemed to have eaten their fill, clustering together in large numbers to form various strange shapes. Some looked like keys, some like glasses, some like masks, some like doors, some like scepters, and some like humans. Just as Li Meng tried to further distinguish the shapes of those maggots, a sudden splitting pain shot through his mind, as if something had entered his head to crush his brains. Under the intense pain, his eyes quickly left the images on the ceiling, and the pain immediately vanished. A warm flow came from beneath his nose. He touched it, it was bright red blood. Noticing his abnormality, Lola put down the documents in her hand and quickly walked over, supporting him as he sat down on a chair near the wall. Don't look at those paintings, especially the ones on the ceiling. They were left by a shaman king who has already fallen into a deep sleep. No one knows what he wanted to express. Those followers who aren't devout enough will go mad with just one look. As for beyonders of other pathways, it's possible they could lose control immediately. You've already been very lucky. Then why didn't you warn me before? However, for someone with strong curiosity, it was hard to resist such a temptation. What exactly was depicted in those paintings? Li Meng absolutely did not believe that a high-sequence powerhouse would paint these randomly. They certainly had an inherent, profound meaning. But what exactly did those maggots and the giant represent? Could it be that this shaman king got his inspiration from seeing maggots devouring fallen food while he was using the toilet? Monday, asking for recommendation votes and subscriptions. Thank you everyone. Chapter 114. Is it this exciting? After this ordeal, Li Meng finally restrained his curiosity and sat quietly on the chair, waiting for the crimson moon to rise. Only then did he realize he had made an extremely stupid error. It was now early August, and the moon rose very late, sometimes not until the latter half of the night. Wouldn't he have to wait here for a long time? Li Meng himself was someone who could stay up late, but that was based on fun games, good TV shows, and beautiful young ladies. Except for certain pathways, other beyonders cannot stay up late. 1 day without sleep leads to mental disorder, 2 days to spiritual exhaustion, and 3 days to losing control on the spot. When he asked Lola about this, her reply left him between laughter and tears. The rising and setting of the moon are all gifts from the deity, believers only need to accept this gift. Fortunately, it didn't rain or get foggy tonight. By 11 or 12 o'clock, a faint moonlight could already be felt. A weak light shone in from a small glass opening high up, bringing a bit more brightness to the dim cathedral. Li Meng took off his top hat, felt the HLKT necklace and the scholar's book number 9998 on his chest, sat quietly on the chair against the wall, and gazed at the moon sculpture ahead. As the moonlight poured in, the spherical orb enshrined on the altar began to emit bursts of crimson light, like a miniature moon. The moonlight passed through the cathedral and finally fell into that red pool. Upon contact with the moonlight, the red liquid that had been quiet all along began to emit mist and gradually churned, like boiling water. Ever since the moonlight began to pour into the pool, Lola had been kneeling directly in front of it, chanting the incantation Li Meng had provided in Hermes language. That incantation was extremely complex and long. Li Meng had to copy several pages to finish it. In just half a day, Lola had already memorized the entire incantation. The moon rose higher and higher, and the pool water began to boil, emitting a heavy bloody smell as if it had just flowed out of a body. On the walls and ceiling, the patterns seemed to come alive, frantically waving tentacles. The hazy moonlight was like fresh blood, flowing from the sky onto the earth. Seeing this scene, Li Meng had a bad premonition. He touched the necklace and several pages of Emperor Russell's diary and finally made up his mind. Narcissus Street, Tingen City. Klein slept until the middle of the night, when he was suddenly startled awake by a bizarre dream. In the dream, a round, kind face appeared before his eyes. He immediately recognized this as Mr. Triss, whom he had seen in a dream divination. Just as he focused his attention to drive away this strange face, Mr. Triss turned into Madame Trissa. Importantly, this Madame Trissa didn't seem to be wearing any clothes. Her body below the neck perfectly overlapped with the various teachers Klein had seen in his previous life. Whenever Klein thought of a teacher, Trissa's body would change accordingly. The scene was stunning, and Klein liked watching it, but he always felt something was wrong. Although he had heard of AI face swapping technology before crossing over, it wasn't intelligent to this extent. How could there be such an intelligent and automated dream? Why would he think of Trissa? He was a man. Although he later became female, after seeing his male identity, his gender was forever fixed as male in Klein's heart. Thinking of this, Klein felt the scene before him instantly lose its attraction. He forced his eyes open and found an extremely weak and eerie warm current coming from the back of his hand. Intuition told him that everything that happened just now was related to this warm current. He sighed deeply, finally put on his clothes, and used the not-so-obvious method of flipping a coin to divine whether anyone was observing him in the dark. After getting a negative answer, he quickly took 4 steps counterclockwise, chanted the incantation, and entered above the gray fog. New at 69 Shu. Inside that ancient and majestic palace, Klein didn't have time to examine his surroundings and first repeated the divination from earlier to confirm no one was secretly observing him. Just as he was preparing to continue divining, he noticed that the crimson star representing Mr. Hanged Man was now blood red, beating violently like a heart. This is the source of the warmth I felt. It looks a bit dangerous. Klein reached out and picked up the fountain pen that appeared out of thin air. Scribble, scribble, scribble. He wrote a sentence on the illusory white paper. There will be danger if I touch the star representing Mr. Hanged Man. Next, Klein pulled out the projection of the spirit pendulum from his pocket. After several gatherings, he found that any item he carried could be projected above the gray fog, though they would be relatively illusory. Holding the silver chain in his left hand, Klein let the citrine pendant nearly touch the paper, touching the event. The swinging subsided. He half closed his eyes and peacefully chanted the words on the paper in his mind. There will be danger if I touch the star representing Mr. Hanged Man. There will be danger if I touch the star representing Mr. Hanged Man. Over and over, Klein performed the divination using the complete spirit pendulum method without skipping any steps. Opening his eyes, he saw the pure citrine pendant moving rapidly, driving the silver chain to rotate clockwise. Clockwise is affirmative, counterclockwise is negative. Klein gasped. If touching this star even above the gray fog was dangerous, what on earth had the Hanged Man encountered in the real world? Klein paced back and forth above the gray fog and finally made up his mind. Divine one more time. If the danger is unacceptable, I won't touch the star. If the danger is within an acceptable range, I can still give it a try. After all, Mr. Hanged Man is a veteran of the Tarot Club. He had obtained a lot of Beander knowledge from him for free. Even if there's no merit, there's hard work. More importantly, it wasn't easy to find another person. He currently had no way to actively pull in the candidates he wanted, everything depended on luck. Although Mr. Hanged Man earned quite a bit of money, he hadn't spent any, the money was all paid by Miss Justice. Thinking of this, he scribbled and edited on the illusory white paper, writing a new divination statement. Touching the star representing the Hanged Man will cause harm to myself. After chanting 7 times, Klein opened his eyes. The crystal was still rotating clockwise at high speed, exactly the same as before. Klein hesitated, stood up from the high-backed chair, and began walking along the table. After a while, he suddenly had an inspiration. Touching the star representing the Hanged Man will cause harm to the gray fog. This time, although the crystal rotated clockwise, the speed was much slower. Great harm to himself but little impact on the gray fog. What did this mean? Klein extended his spirituality and cautiously touched it in the manner of a prayer recall. Light and shadow shifted, and a blurred scene quickly appeared before his eyes. Above a large red pool, two naked bodies were entangled. The female's figure and appearance instantly reminded Klein of a heroine from a game he had played. Is it this exciting? For some reason, Klein felt he had suffered a great deal of damage. Chapter 115, Bet Right. Does Mr. Hanged Man intend to show me this? Cough, what am I thinking? That star has been dyed blood red, which means Mr. Hanged Man is in danger. I must save him first. While reproaching himself, Klein pressed his hand onto the star and began to ponder the cause and effect of the situation. He was fairly certain of one thing: the way this mysterious space above the gray fog established connections with Mr. Hanged Man and the others wasn't absolutely bizarre or outside the rules of this world. It was still subject to certain constraints and could be influenced by specific methods to some extent. For instance, right now, Mr. Hanged Man was being invaded by some kind of external force. Somehow, this power had reached above the gray fog, and the gray fog had indirectly influenced me, causing me to have that strange dream. Klein kept his hand on the star, hesitating for a long time. Just as he was about to make up his mind, he noticed the scene changed again. The blood beneath the two of them began to burn violently, and the image became increasingly blood-red and blurry, as if someone had splashed a large basin of plasma in front of a camera lens. That woman with a near-perfect figure grew a pair of blood-red wings from her back. Her originally white and smooth skin began to manifest various strange and twisted patterns. Those patterns were squirming beneath her skin, seemingly wanting to pierce through and fly out of her body. This scene reminded Klein of the vampire movies he had seen in his previous life, gloomy and terrifying. The vampire opened her mouth, revealing two sharp fangs, and let out a shrill wail toward the sky. Even through the gray fog, Klein could still feel her pain and anger. Opening her mouth wide, the vampire looked at Mr. Hanged Man nearby as if she had discovered new prey, while Mr. Hanged Man remained unconscious, completely unresponsive. Seeing the Hanged Man standing on the boiling blood, seemingly unconscious, Klein didn't have time to overthink. With a thought, he decided to pull Mr. Hanged Man above the gray fog first. He reluctantly averted his gaze from the vampire and concentrated his will on the crimson star before him. Just then, he discovered that Mr. Hanged Man's astral body was entwined with rings of red tentacles. Their color was identical to the color of the star representing the Hanged Man above the gray fog after it had been contaminated. As the Hanged Man's astral body passed through the endless gray fog, attempting to enter this miraculous place where Mr. Fool resided, those tentacles also clung tightly to the astral body, wanting to enter the gray fog along with it. Klein's heart suddenly leapt into his throat. He finally understood what the rapidly spinning crystal meant during his divination. Something was trying to invade this place. At this moment, he suddenly had a feeling that everything had been arranged. Was this a trap set by Mr. Hanged Man to seize my position? Or had he been schemed against? Just as Klein was about to remove his hand from the crimson star, severing the connection with the Hanged Man so his spirit body couldn't enter the gray fog, he suddenly noticed that these tentacles seemed to lack sufficient power. Upon encountering the gray fog, they were like butter meeting a red-hot iron plate, melting away rapidly. Klein placed his hand back onto the star. By the time the Hanged Man's spirit body appeared in the high-backed chair, more than half of those red tentacles had snapped and melted. The gray fog shuddered, and the tentacles began to twist and break, eventually all turning into flying ash and disappearing within the vast hall. The Hanged Man looked somewhat haggard. He looked toward Mr. Fool at the head of the bronze long table, only to see Mr. Fool give a slight nod of acknowledgement. I bet right. At this moment, Li Meng had the sensation of narrowly escaping death, as well as the unparalleled excitement of a gambler who had won big after betting all his chips. As Laura finished chanting the incantation and began the next step of the ritual, he suddenly discovered an extremely secretive power invading his body. This invasion was different from the pollution-creating evil gods like the true creator. It was an extremely hidden process of body modification that would make one's body stronger while simultaneously intensifying the desire for survival and reproduction. Most importantly, this power seemed to be intensely beloved by his own flesh, which uncontrollably and rapidly merged with it. That feeling was like a withered sapling meeting long-awaited spring rain. like a thirsty traveler finding sweet spring water, like a seed sprouting in spring meeting fertile soil, and like a wayward son returning to the warm embrace of his mother. In this instant, he almost lost the ability to resist. No one could refuse such a temptation coming from their own body. The struggle of the will appeared utterly useless in the face of physical instinct. In the current situation, only Klein could use the gray fog to save him. Li Meng had considered countless possibilities before setting out, and this one could only be handled by Mr. Fool. After struggling to recite Mr. Fool's honorable name, he could no longer resist the temptation from within his body. He lunged at the nearest living being, wanting to become one with it and grow together into a towering tree on this fertile soil. In a state of semi-lucidity and semi-madness, he felt his astral body also begin to be gradually eroded. That power was not only modifying his flesh but also beginning to pollute his spirit, causing his consciousness to blur. He hoped Klein wasn't asleep or having a nightmare. His life as a transmigrator couldn't end this quickly. Just as Li Meng focused all his attention on resisting the erosion of his will, he suddenly felt his body lighten, and he seemed to regain his senses. The boundless gray fog, the vast and distant divine hall, the giant bronze long table and rows of high-backed chairs, and Mr. Fool, who looked very mysterious, sitting at the very head of the bronze long table. Looking at everything before him, Li Meng couldn't help but feel a bit emotional. Although he knew Mr. Fool was Klein in disguise and that he was currently only a sequence 9, among these deities, none were more reliable than him. However, now was not the time to express gratitude. His body outside was in an unknown state of life or death and urgently needed to wake up. Mr. Fool clearly understood this as well. With a light tap of his finger on the bronze long table, Li Meng returned to his own body. That mysterious power had vanished for now, and Li Meng regained control over his body. But the surging life force within him told him that things weren't that simple. Just as he bent down to pick up the shepherd's gloves, no 9,998 feet that had fallen on the ground, the red moonlight suddenly dimmed for a moment. Li Meng didn't have time to think. He quickly infused his spirituality into the gloves, and a gust of wild wind swept through the enclosed hall, moving his body from its original spot. A second later, a black shadow landed heavily where he had just picked up the gloves. The black shadow slowly stood up and unfurled its wings, revealing the body within. From her appearance, it could be seen that she was once Madame Laura. Her naked body was covered in strange symbols, and 2 sharp fangs protruded from her mouth, emitting a pale light under the moonlight, with flecks of bright red blood on the tips. Chapter 116, Spending £2,275. Chapter 116, Spending £2,275 seeking monthly votes and subscriptions. The mutated Lola's body became even stronger. Her black wings glided through the air for a while before she vanished from Li Meng's sight again. Without hesitation, Li Meng switched to the hypnotist soul on his ring finger and used psychological invisibility. Open black lens bracket. Remember the domain name of this site. To read Taiwan novels go to twcon.com, very smooth close black lens bracket. Just as he thought he could catch his breath, a black figure swooped down from high above, completely ignoring the invisibility. Li Meng had long expected the failure of psychological invisibility. From the moment he met Duckwell, he knew that the apothecary pathway was particularly sensitive to scents. Scenes of vampires identifying positions through scent often appeared in the movies Li Meng had seen before his transmigration. Watching the black shadow rushing down, Li Meng once again used a gale to move his body away. However, the vampire that Lola had transformed into was well prepared. On her 5 slender and powerful fingers, nails with mystical symbols and patterns grew once more. The sharp nails, a full 20 centimeters long, were like small, thin swords, gleaming with a sharp cold light, and the tips were still stained with spots of blood. Those were the marks left after Lola's sneak attack on Li Meng, where her nails had scratched through the phantom scales on the surface of his body. Clearly, even though this vampire had lost her reason, her combat instincts remained powerful. After the failure of her first sneak attack on Li Meng, she already had a general understanding of his speed and agility, and her next attack would be adjusted accordingly. She simply hadn't noticed the phantom scales on Li Meng's body and failed to break through his defense. However, the next attack would surely be even more fierce. Having missed her strike, the vampire flapped her wings without hesitation and flew into the sky. The massive membranes flapped in the air, and in the blink of an eye, she vanished into the darkness again. Li Meng felt that the phantom scales covering his entire body seemed to have a tendency to collapse. That vampire's claws had strong corrosiveness. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before his unprotected body was completely exposed to the vampire. Clearly, Lola, hidden in the darkness, was also aware of this. Now there was no movement at all, making it difficult for Li Meng to judge her position. Time passed slowly in the stalemate between the two. Li Meng felt waves of torment. Time had never passed so slowly. Just then, he heard a series of ancient incantations in his ears. The sound grew from soft to loud, filling the entire church in an instant. Just as Li Meng was preparing to continue injecting spirituality into his glove, he suddenly found that his body was once again unable to move. Abyssal shackles. As the last ancient Hermes language word fell, a thick, filthy chain spread out from the darkness, shrinking into a bundle in the blink of an eye and tightly binding Li Meng. The chain was pitch black and deep, stained with mottled blood. One end was dragged out from a boiling pool of blood, while the other extended into the boundless night, connecting to the fallen abyss. Li Meng felt that not only was his body unable to move, but even the flow of his spirituality began to become sluggish. This chain not only restricted physical movement but also polluted one's spirituality. Above his head, the vanished vampire appeared again. She folded her wings and glided down, her posture elegant and lethal. Li Meng looked up with difficulty and saw that wide-open mouth and the four fangs exposed inside. At that moment, he remembered the monster he encountered just as he was preparing to walk out of the forsaken land of the gods. It also had its mouth wide open, preparing to deliver a fatal blow. Fortunately, he was no longer that number 9998 who was defenseless against monsters in the forsaken land of the gods. Just as the vampire's sharp teeth were about to cut into Li Meng's throat, Li Meng also managed with difficulty to pour most of his spirituality into the notary soul on his glove, emitting a light of purification toward the vampire about to tear his throat apart. The dim temple of the primordial moon suddenly brightened. The deep gloom and darkness vanished simultaneously, and the black chain wrapped around Li Meng seemed to be frightened, instantly disappearing into the darkness. The translucent glass of the temple had been shattered into a fist-sized hole. A beam of golden sunlight passed through it, carrying high temperature and heat, heading straight for the vampire in front of him. Li Meng endured the tears brought by the blinding sunlight and saw that beam of light crash into the vampire. The vampire's teeth, which had already penetrated Li Meng's neck, were suddenly pulled out, and her entire body burned fiercely as if it had been set on fire. The vampire that Lola had become opened her mouth and let out a shrill scream. Just as Li Meng thought she would explode on the spot like in the movies, her entire body suddenly became illusory, and small bats flew out from her body. Since his spirituality was exhausted, Li Meng could only watch those small bats fly through the hole in the roof and disappear under the crimson moonlight. That was close. If Lola hadn't been unaware that he possessed a sun pathway mystical item and had directly exposed her body, he would likely have been in grave danger today. Li Meng picked up the HLKY necklace from the ground with some lingering fear and searched around, only to find that his clothes and wallet had been completely corroded by the blood water. The scene where both sides fight for a long time without even their clothes tearing is too unscientific. In a fight like his with Lola, the clothes vanished completely, leaving not even a scrap of modesty. However, Li Meng didn't have time to care about that, because he remembered that his wallet contained 920 pounds. 920 pounds, plus 3 1-pound gold coins, and 15 sols and 11 pennies in change, all gone. A total of 923 pounds, 15 sols, and 11 pennies were all gone. Moreover, he still had to pay Mr. Locke a 20-pound handling fee, which couldn't be skipped. He couldn't just tell him his money was gone and therefore wouldn't pay. Adding the 13 sols for the wallet, rounding it up, that was 1,000 pounds just gone. This money could buy a villa with a garden on middle 3 streets in Tiana. Even in Empress Borough, where housing prices in Backland are the highest, it could pay for a year's rent on a villa. The annual income of many barons and merchants was barely 1,000 pounds. In the extraordinary world, 1,000 pounds could buy a powerful mystical item, 1,000 pounds could buy a sequence 7 potion formula with change to spare, and 1,000 pounds could buy 3 days of a sequence 5 powerhouse's time. But now, this 1,000 pounds had vanished just like that. He felt a tightness in his chest, with no sense of excitement from defeating Lola at all. Just as Li Meng unwillingly wanted to turn the entire temple upside down and search floorboard by floorboard, he suddenly noticed out of the corner of his eye a spherical, fluffy object floating and flying at high speed in the air, seemingly trying to squeeze through that broken hole in the roof. Clearly, however, it didn't have the vampire's ability to transform into bats, nor could it expand the area of the hole. It could only bump around helplessly, hoping to open a new passage. Li Meng recognized what it was at a glance and also remembered the purpose of his visit. To activate this tumbleweed, using up the last of his spirituality, he flew into the air and grabbed the tumbleweed. Back in Tiana, he had spent 850 pounds to buy a fresh adult tumbleweed. A few days later, while being pursued by the Nighthawks, the tumbleweed was lost along with the scorching scar. For this tumbleweed, he had spent 505 pounds to buy it from Muriel, plus the 920 pounds lost now. Just for this one main ingredient, he had spent 2,275 pounds. Even with money, one couldn't afford to spend it like this. In Li Meng's incomplete memories, it seemed a sequence 6 formula was only around this price. Chapter 117, The Weakest Sequence 7. No. 7 Iron Gate Street. Li Meng finished washing up, returned to the second floor, and locked the door behind him. After escaping from that mysterious church, relying on his last bit of spirituality, he used his Dream Stealer ability to borrow a set of clothes that could barely cover his body from a roadside yard. He then took the first morning train from Pritzport to Backland and returned to Iron Gate Street. Of course, the ticket was also borrowed. Back home, Li Meng struggled to suppress his drowsiness. He placed the tumbleweed into a pre-prepared wire cage and collapsed onto the bed, not getting up again. When he woke up, it was already 8 a.m. the next morning. Looking at the adult tumbleweed struggling and rolling before him, Li Meng finally felt a sense of relief. The effect of the creature growth spell was even better than he had imagined. The tumbleweed had not only regained its vitality but had also become more active. Inside the wire cage, it repeatedly collided with force. It didn't feel like a plant, but more like a beast sensing danger. Li Meng had 2 theories regarding Lola turning into a vampire. One possibility was that there was an issue with the ritual itself, but he couldn't fathom why. This ritual had appeared from the scholar's book number 9998 based on his needs, and no one was manipulating it. The second possibility, and the truth Li Meng was more inclined to believe, was an issue with the church itself. The aura of the primordial moon there was too thick, causing the creature growth spell to not only increase the spirituality of the tumbleweed but also the spirituality of the potion within Lola's body, as well as the spirituality of the mystical items enshrined in the temple. While this greatly increased Lola's strength, it also caused her to lose her sanity and begin attacking him frantically. What made Li Meng even more curious was that his body seemed to have a strange craving for the aura of the primordial moon. Originally, wearing the HLKY necklace was enough to block the ravings of the primordial moon. However, that strange power directly invaded his body, and his body chose to actively accept it, causing him to lose his ability to resist. He didn't know what part of him was so attractive to the primordial moon. Pushing these strange thoughts out of his mind, Li Meng locked the door and began concocting the hermit potion. First, he added 60 milliliters of not-so-pure water into a glass bottle, then began adding the blood of a fallen creature. This blood was obtained through a trade with Black Snake at a Beander gathering in the Brave Ones bar. Judging by the listener's leftover Beander characteristic and the fallen creature blood he produced, a believer of the true creator had lost his life, and Black Snake was likely involved. With the experience of concocting the listener potion, Li Meng's movements this time were skilled and confident. After 5 drops of fallen creature blood were dripped into the pure water, because the water wasn't as pure this time, the blood began to dissolve, burrowing into the glass bottle like threads of blood. Li Meng quickly threw in the tumbleweed seeds. The blood that was about to dissolve seemed to find a catalyst and began to frantically permeate these seeds. The tumbleweed seeds also seemed to begin awakening to life, trying to avoid the corrosive bloody water. However, the bottle was too small, and the bloody water completely surrounded them, leaving them powerless to resist. The bloody water began to turn gray. Li Meng touched it with his hand, It was somewhat warm, but not yet to the point of being scalding. It seemed that when he concocted the listener potion last time, the water was too clean and didn't dissolve the fallen creature blood well, keeping it in a very high concentration that even caustic soda powder couldn't corrode. With the addition of the mind-disturbing flour, the three substances came into direct contact without being fully dissolved, leading to a particularly violent reaction. The resulting high temperature and heat made concocting the potion feel like manufacturing explosives. This time, he had mixed the pure water with half ordinary water, and the effect seemed much better. Li Meng tossed 10 grams of black gemstone powder into the glass bottle, watching as the liquid inside changed from a reddish-gray to pure black, like a night without moon or stars where all light had vanished, looking deep and enchanting. The dyeing effect is quite good. I could consider opening a dye house in the future, although at a price of 17 sol per gram, ordinary people couldn't afford it. Li Meng put aside his stray thoughts and tossed the rabbit head of the shadow ghost rabbit he bought from Mr. A into the black liquid. This gray rabbit head, which had already shrunk to the size of a fist, dissolved without reaction upon hitting the water. The potion in the bottle gradually lightened from black, appearing as though it might return to being transparent. Li Meng thought for a moment and decided against tossing in the adult tumbleweed immediately. He put on the HLKY necklace and the shepherd's gloves number 9998, reinforced the room's wall of spirituality once more, and only then took out the fully activated tumbleweed from the wire cage. The experience of almost being directly obliterated by the true creator's malice last time had given him a profound understanding of the danger at the moment of consuming a potion. The fully activated tumbleweed struggled desperately in Li Meng's hand, making him feel as though he were holding not a plant, but a living being. For the sake of my great Beander cause, you may go in peace. The true creator will bless you. Li Meng muttered to himself a few times and tapped his chest 4 times clockwise before forcefully pressing the adult tumbleweed into the glass bottle, immediately covering the opening with his gloved right hand. Right pointing arrow. As soon as the tumbleweed's branches and leaves touched the translucent potion, they contracted violently as if on fire, rolling desperately toward the bottle's opening. Unhurriedly, Li Meng extended his middle finger and pressed the tumbleweed back down, making it contact the translucent liquid again. After 3 attempts, the tumbleweed completely disappeared into the glass bottle, and the potion began to become increasingly transparent. Li Meng watched as the liquid in the glass bottle rapidly contracted and lost its shadow, as if it had vanished from this world. However, he wasn't worried at all because his right hand was covering the bottle's opening, so he wasn't afraid of the potion disappearing. A few minutes later, his gloved right hand felt a soft object seemingly colliding with his palm. Li Meng smiled and gave a gentle squeeze. A spherical object, so transparent it was almost invisible, appeared between his fingers. Hermit Potion. Having spent no less than 3,000 pounds in total, from Tiana to Backland, he had finally succeeded. Li Meng even had the illusion that this was heaven's punishment for digesting the listener potion too quickly, deliberately creating obstacles for him. This time, the potion had no taste or texture, as if he had swallowed a ball of air. As this ball of air entered his stomach, that familiar cold wind once again blew out from every organ, every piece of tissue, and every cell of Li Meng's body. If the listener potion was a level 8 wind, then the hermit potion blew a level 12 gale. The chill brought by this gale pierced his bones, instantly freezing his body and making it difficult for him to even take a single step. I won't lose control like this, will I? Even after I've blocked the true creator's ravings, it's still like this. How do those people from the Aurora Order endure it? Li Meng struggled to move toward the window, wanting the sunlight outside to shine on his body and bring him a bit of warmth. Just then, he noticed the gale beginning to converge, turning into fine needles. Mingled with the aura of the hermit potion, they pierced into his cells, entering the most minute realms of his body and beginning a fundamental transformation. That sensation changed from cold to heart-wrenching pain, as if every part of his body were being soaked in water containing sulfuric acid. Along with this corrosive pain, he saw his shadow gradually fading. In the shade cast by the sunlight, he watched his body gradually disappear, while the part bathed in sunlight remained real and vivid. As the transformation neared completion, the pain in his body also began to subside. Curiously, Li Meng walked from the shadows into the sunlight, then from the sunlight back into the shadows, his body darkened and lightened like a chameleon. He recalled a trivial question from before he transmigrated. If you put a chameleon under a strobe light, would it die of exhaustion? Now he could answer with certainty, a chameleon wouldn't die of exhaustion. After changing a few times, when the body felt tired, it would simply stop changing. Just like him now, after his body transitioned between transparency and opacity a few times, there were signs of spiritual exhaustion. A few more changes and he could go meet the true creator on the spot and return to the forsaken land of the gods. Invisibility is good, but it shouldn't be used frequently. Looking at himself in the mirror with only his upper body visible, Li Meng felt an urge to direct a horror movie himself. Without mental preparation, waking up to find your head missing in the mirror could scare you to death. Just thinking about that scene was terrifying. However, while this invisibility was good, it also had significant drawbacks. It could only be used in places where the sunlight wasn't strong and there were already shadows. Light that was too intense would instantly cause his shadow to appear on the ground, making the invisibility fail. This meant he could only fight or launch sneak attacks at night or in shadowed areas. Although his movement speed would increase after fully entering the shadows, his spirituality would be consumed faster, so there was no way to use shadows for long-distance travel. Because he failed to listen to the true creator's teachings, Li Meng still hadn't gained any other abilities after advancing to Sequence 7. Without using mystical items, saying he was the weakest Sequence 7 wasn't being modest. Because he remembered that after Klein advanced to Sequence 7, the abilities he gained were so numerous he couldn't even remember them all now. As for Miss Justice, after advancing to Sequence 7, she had also developed muscle, and her melee combat capabilities had significantly improved, not to mention various mystical abilities in the field of psychology. If Li Meng were accidentally controlled, he could pour out everything about his life before and after transmigrating, and even expose Mr. Fool's secrets in the process. Li Meng thought about it, and his back began to feel a bit chilled. He had blocked his ears, so he didn't have to receive the true creator's corruption, but he had also lost the greatest reliance of the Hanged Man pathway. Those dark, filthy, fallen, mutated, and twisted mystical abilities had all moved far away from him. He must complete his advancement before Miss Justice and Mr. Fool in the future, otherwise, the outcome would be miserable, especially with Miss Justice. He must never let her see through him. Chapter 118. I don't even recognize it myself. Li Meng flipped through the Scholar's Book number 9998, silently memorizing the formulas on it. Sequence 6. Rose Bishop. Main ingredients: 6 tentacles of a gloomy jellyfish, 1 piece of crimson-wrought moss. Supplementary materials: 60 milliliters of pure water, 5 drops of blood from any fallen creature, 30 milliliters of fresh gloomy jellyfish juice, 3 grams of dried flesh powder, 4 drops of psychedelic grass essential oil, 1 blooming rose. Following his advancement to Sequence 7, all the Sequence 7 formulas appeared in the Scholar's Book. However, who to sell the formula to was a problem. Miss Justice has likely only just digested the Spectator potion and is at most starting to prepare the Telepathist potion. She won't need the Sequence 7 feat psychiatrist, for the time being. Moreover, she might take the initiative to contact the psychology alchemists and no longer obtain formulas from him. Mr. Locke on Tiana Island did take the Telepathist potion, but only a month has passed, so he is surely far from full digestion. The other parties' letters haven't mentioned the potion either, clearly not yet considering an advancement to Sequence 7. However, he could write to him and ask him to sell the formula on his behalf while seeking the main ingredients for the Sequence 6 potion. Li Meng had always felt that Black Abyss Castle had great potential for exploration. If he could enter the 3rd floor, there would surely be things more worth trading for. Mr. Locke hasn't replied to me yet regarding the medullary crystals of the Fountain of Elves. I asked him to look out for. It seems things aren't going smoothly over there either. Muriel's sequence is unknown, but by the looks of it, the tribunal behind him must possess higher sequence potion formulas. However, it's very likely he possesses the potion materials for a Rose Bishop. The one who knows you best is often your enemy. This saying is equally appropriate for Beyonder pathways. Having fought Beyonders of the Faceless pathway for thousands of years, they must understand this Beyonder pathway very well. This could be verified by their deliberate collection and destruction of tumbleweed. I'll take another trip to know. 79. Iron Gate Street when I have time. As for selling formulas at Beander gatherings, Backland's waters are too deep. Li Meng felt he might not be able to handle it. The formulas that appear at those Beander gatherings are often released by certain major powers. If he wasn't careful, he could fall into their trap. The best way is to first see if anyone is looking to buy a formula, and then decide whether to proceed with the trade. Zio and Furs do need formulas, but it still has to be through Miss Justice. If he approached them now, it would only expose more. Who else? Li Meng couldn't help but think of Mr. Fool. Klein. He did have a need to buy potions, but he couldn't sell them to him directly at the moment. Most importantly, Li Meng felt he had no money. Thinking of this, he suddenly remembered that the night before last, Mr. Fool had saved his life. According to the unspoken rules, he should show his respect to Mr. Fool and offer his own sacrifice while he was at it. He had originally purchased 3 pages of Roussel Gustave's diary, prepared for the day he would request Mr. Fool's help, but unfortunately, they were all corroded away during that battle. Li Meng couldn't help but feel lucky that he had read them beforehand and remembered the general content. He decided to transcribe the general content of those 3 pages of the diary first and offer them to Mr. Fool at the next gathering. Just as he picked up the pen, Li Meng realized he only remembered the general content, while the specific characters had long since slipped his mind. After all, he wasn't a savant, let alone one of those transmigrators who could easily produce dozens of literary works after crossing over. He wasn't very good at copying books. Do I really have to use pounds to buy a few more pages of the diary? How could a transmigrator do something so foolish? Li Meng paced around the table for a long time before finally picking up the pen and scribbling a few lines randomly on the table, suddenly struck by inspiration. Right pointing arrow. Many of the Roussel's diary pages circulating on the market were repeatedly transcribed, and those transcribers didn't know Chinese characters, so they could only draw them based on the shapes. Copying errors and omissions were certainly common, and there were even many who copied them into utter nonsense. As long as he got the general meaning right, he could just make up the rest. Right, to prevent Mr. Fool from seeing that the transcriber knew Chinese, he had to copy the characters particularly poorly. But habits formed over decades weren't that easy to change. Li Meng's handwriting, while not an exaggeration to call hideous among those who wrote Chinese, could still be barely called that of a calligrapher among those who didn't know Chinese. Mr. Fool would just have to suffer a bit more. Thinking of this, Li Meng picked up the fountain pen with his left hand. For someone whose right-handed writing was already ugly, his left hand was naturally even worse. After finishing, Li Meng almost didn't recognize it himself. Because he couldn't memorize the full text, he randomly added some symbols that no one would recognize to make up the 3 pages. Combined with those particularly abstract Chinese characters, it would be hard to guess what the author wanted to write without knowing the original meaning in advance. His conscience stopped Li Meng's idea of continuing to fabricate Roussel's diary. He'd better add some more pounds and give them to Mr. Fool together. Adding flowers to a brocade is not as good as providing charcoal in the snow. Mr. Fool had sent him charcoal, so he certainly had to show his appreciation. Empress Burrow, at Viscount Glaint's dinner party. According to the agreement, Glaint should meet with Audrey, Furs, and Zio Derecha in the study halfway through the banquet to discuss matters of the Beander world. According to Miss Audrey, she had important matters to discuss with Furs in person. But when she used going to the powder room as an excuse, held up her skirt, slowly stood up, left the salon, and instructed her personal maid to guard the door, she still hadn't seen Viscount Glaint and Furs. Looking at Zio, who was also waiting in the study and had already started pacing back and forth, Audrey felt something was wrong. It had been nearly half an hour. Because Glaint had never been late for her affairs, making her wait this long was very abnormal. This was a woman's intuition, and also the wisdom of a spectator. Not to mention Furs, she hadn't come either. Audrey knew that Furs always hoped to increase her income through her, so she wouldn't casually delay their appointment. What are they doing? Why aren't they here yet? Could something have happened? Zio Derecha spoke with a somewhat impatient tone. Originally, she had come with Furs, but Furs, who was more proficient in high society, decided to check out the banquet first, promote her books along the way, eat some desserts, and finally meet them in the study. The young Zio Derecha didn't have so many requirements. Led by a servant of Viscount Glaint's house, she went directly into the study and had been waiting until now, for a full hour. It wasn't that she hadn't thought about going out to look, but considering she had just come out of the detention center, it was better not to casually cause trouble for the host. Moreover, Miss Audrey was still waiting here, which put her mind slightly at ease. But in the end, she couldn't help it anymore. How about we go to the front and take a look? Chapter 119, The Female Lead. Wait here for a moment. I'll go out and see what's happening. Audrey was quite aware of Zio's current situation. She was also worried about what was happening outside. Letting the impulsive Zio go out would only make the trouble worse. Her personal maid, Annie, had been waiting at the door. Seeing Audrey come out, she hurried over. Did something happen outside? Annie thought for a moment before speaking hesitantly. Does it count that Viscount Glaint's maid just came to clean the washroom? That's not what I meant. I'll go check the hall myself. Seeing no abnormality in the maid's behavior, Audrey lifted her skirt and went straight down the stairs to the first-floor hall. It was just like any other banquet. There was no difference, guests were still dancing, chatting, playing cards, and drinking. Everything seemed normal. Audrey stood at the entrance and scanned the hall, quickly spotting furs. She held a small piece of cake, but her eyes were fixed on a certain spot in the hall. Due to the angle, Audrey couldn't see what she was looking at for the moment. Audrey watched as Furs tried to put the cake into her mouth, but because she was so distracted, her movements were extremely uncoordinated. A sharp corner of the cake actually ended up in her nostril. It wasn't until Audrey walked up to her and blocked her view that Furs put down the cake, rubbed her nose, and wiped off the cream. Audrey, guess what I found? A beautiful lady. Her beauty is truly impressive. I think I've found the female lead for my next novel. Viscount Glaint even praised her for her outstanding artistic talent. Feeling Furs's overflowing excitement and obsession, Audrey said with some doubt. At the last banquet, didn't you say I was the female lead for your next novel? Furs began to tilt her head slightly, as if trying to look past Audrey at her target behind her. No, it's different. This lady has more temperament, she's more suited to be the female lead. After finishing her sentence, Furs's unfocused eyes finally settled on Audrey, her brain seemingly just realizing who was standing in front of her. Audrey watched as her expression shifted instantly from excitement, fanaticism, and obsession to surprise, fawning, worry, and even a hint of fear. Miss Audrey, I didn't mean it like that. The reason I said this lady is more suitable for the lead role is that she's better at playing the lead. The spectators don't care about the script at all, they just want a beautiful female lead. Stop talking. Audrey lifted her skirt and strode away from Furs. In another corner of the hall, she saw Viscount Glaint, who was also in a daze. This time, approaching from behind, she finally saw the woman in Glaint's line of sight. A woman in a translucent gauze dress sat on a sofa facing the window, holding a glass of red wine and staring blankly into the distance. The flickering candlelight shone on her fair skin like a frozen oil painting, making Audrey daze for a moment as well. Her long brown hair fell like a waterfall, and her features were delicate and small, like a princess from a fairy tale. Those brown eyes, deep and pure, made it hard to look away. Maturity and purity, two completely different temperaments, blended perfectly in her, making her look like both an elf and a witch. No wonder Furs became so strange. Audrey began to understand her. Seeing Audrey approach, Viscount Glaint's eyes finally regained their liveliness, and he began to introduce her. That is Madame Elena, the daughter of Baron Rice, introduced by Madame Liana. Don't you think she's exceptionally beautiful? I don't want to answer that kind of question. Audrey grumbled inwardly. However, Viscount Glaint clearly had no intention of waiting for her answer and continued talking incessantly. Can an engagement be broken after a year? Who should I approach to propose marriage? What gifts should I prepare for the first visit? What should I say? Can I invite her to our gathering? Would she dislike someone older? Which deity does she believe in? Where should our wedding be held? What should our children be named? I don't want to know what your children are named. I refuse to let her join our Beander gathering. I think you'll get beaten up if you try to break an engagement now, and I think it would be best if you shut up right now. Audrey screamed frantically in her mind. She felt as if the world had gone mad. Just as Audrey lifted her skirt, preparing to leave quickly, her hand was suddenly grabbed by Viscount Glaint. Usually, when a girl's hand is grabbed by someone, especially a young man, she might feel shy or have stray thoughts, but Audrey didn't feel the slightest bit of romance right now. Because Viscount Glaint's hand was clamped onto her wrist like a pincer, as if he were afraid she would run away. "Audrey, can you help me mention this to Count Hall? I'm only a Viscount, I'm worried I'm not good enough for her. I think it would be better if Count Hall made the proposal." Looking at the burning light in the Viscount's eyes, Audrey felt her head buzzing. Even the spectator potion she had consumed showed signs of losing control. Using the last of her sanity, she forced a smile at Viscount Glaint. "I'll go find my father right now. Wait for my good news." Viscount Glaint's hand released. Audrey strode out of the banquet hall, completely ignoring the urgent shouts of her maid, Annie. "This world is too terrifying. I want to see Mr. Fool. I want to ask Mr. Hanged Man what's going on. Not far away. No." 3006 Elena watched as Viscount Glaint let go of Audrey's hand and seemed about to turn back toward her. She immediately downed the red wine in her glass, placed it on a table far away, and twisted her neck with effort to look at an oil painting on the wall, appearing like an artist in deep thought. Staying in one position for too long is really uncomfortable. Why are there so few people who throw themselves into love regardless of the consequences? I haven't felt much of others' pain, so the potion is digesting very slowly. Except for that young Viscount. He seems to have a lot of potential. I can ramp things up later to make him suffer twice as much. Sigh, every time I attend a gathering, I have to buy new clothes, makeup, and gifts. If this continues, I'll go bankrupt before the potion is even digested. Do I really have to use that method to speed up the potion's digestion? Would that enrage the high-sequence avatar? Elena's mind was racing, but her eyes remained fixed on an oil painting hanging in the hall. It depicted a saint of the Evernight goddess, Madame Selena, fighting bloodily against various demons and monsters, heroic and fearless, slaughtering them all. Legend had it that this Saint Selena had slain countless heretics during the ancient Third Epoch, protecting devout believers during disasters and defending the glory of the Evernight goddess. Among the figures deliberately distorted and uglified by the painter, a few even wore strange monocles. Chapter 120. I was actually counseled by a dog. Empress Burrow, the Hall family castle. Watching the sullen Audrey, Susie walked out from a shadowy corner on her four long legs. She habitually stuck out her tongue, wanting to give Audrey a lick. But she quickly remembered she was now a talking dog, and the act of licking wasn't very elegant. Human problems needed to be solved in a human way. Thinking this, she found a comfortable position to half lie down on a soft sofa in front of Audrey. That is, with her two hind legs curled and her two front legs supporting her body, making herself look like an intelligent dog. "Audrey, what happened that made you so unhappy? I can feel you've been sullen ever since you came back last night, right up until now." Sitting on the soft sofa, Susie lifted a paw and rubbed her nose, as if there were an invisible pair of glasses there. As a spectator, you must adjust your mindset. If a spectator is often influenced by the actors, she can easily lose herself, leading to a loss of control. Audrey suddenly looked up, puzzled, and studied Susie carefully. Golden, silky long fur, slightly yellowish eyes, a sign of impure bloodline. Why does a dog know so much? Did we ingest the same potion? I don't know why either. This knowledge seems to have always been stored inside my body. The spectator potion awakened it, Susie said, as if she had seen through Audrey's confusion. No matter what, we are the best of partners. I hope you stay well. Speak out what's troubling you, it won't feel so bad then. Not even my human friends are this attentive. Audrey weighed her words and told Susie everything that had happened at Viscount Glaint's dinner party. Susie wore a very attentive expression, nodding her large dog head from time to time. Her golden fur danced lightly with the movement, like a teacher listening to a student's progress report. Actually, it's no big deal. Do you know Xiao He? Susie nodded vigorously, wearing an expression that said she already knew the whole truth. Xiao He? Audrey asked back, puzzled. It's the dog Annie keeps in the kitchen. From your human perspective, it might not be beautiful, but it's very robust. Audrey remembered. It was a dog the maid Annie kept at the kitchen door on Mother's orders, mainly responsible for guarding the various meats in the kitchen to prevent rats and other unidentified creatures from sneaking in to steal food. That dog's fur was shiny black all over, its round eyes gleaming with a fierce light. It didn't look cute at all. Audrey had never tried to play with it and had even consciously kept her distance. Alright, I didn't know its name was Xiaohei. That's not important. For low-intelligence creatures like it, you don't need a very complicated name. Otherwise, it could cause irreversible damage to its brain. Susie's tone held a mix of pride and pity. Before I ingested the spectator potion, Xiaohei often brought me meaty bones. Even though I didn't like it, I couldn't refuse those bones, so I never stopped interacting with it. But after I drank the spectator potion, I never wanted anything to do with it again. It's too stupid. It can't even say, hello, just barks its head off. What happened after that? Does even Susie have a love story? Audrey couldn't help but interject. It's been like that all month. I thought I had forgotten about it. In fact, I hardly noticed it during that time. Even when it appeared in front of me, I didn't care. But then, this morning, I saw it carrying a meaty bone through a hole in the wall to find Xiao Bai, sharing the meat on that bone with Xiao Bai. Its happy, excited expression made me very sad. Don't be sad. I'll have Annie bring you a few big bones, the kind with large chunks of fresh meat. Listening to Susie's story, Audrey's emotions were gradually stirred, and she began to comfort Susie. No, Audrey, that's not the point. I don't like raw meat anymore, and I certainly don't want to gnaw on those boring bones. What I mean is, I never actually liked Xiaohei. So why did I feel sad when I saw it give the bone to Xiao Bai? Susie raised her head, looking up at the sky at a 45-degree angle. The whole dog seemed filled with an air of wisdom and idealism. That's because I had always considered Xiaohei my own, considered its possessions my possessions. Even though I didn't need those things, my heart was still full of possessiveness. I didn't want those things to become someone else's. So, when I saw Xiaohei give the bone to Xiao Bai, I felt sad. That's because I had always treated Xiaohei's things as my own. But in fact, Xiaohei is another dog. It has its own choices, which have nothing to do with me. I shouldn't be upset about it. Possessiveness without reason is a flaw of human nature, a root of human suffering. It can even make humans grieve over losing something that never belonged to them in the first place. Susie's voice was low and magnetic, filled with philosophical resonance. My goodness, I was actually counseled by a dog, and it wants to discuss humanity with me. At this moment, Audrey was both bewildered and amazed. The bad mood brought on by Viscount Glaint was completely forgotten. What kind of dog could utter such human words? I must consult Mr. Fool and Mr. Hanged Man. Is every Beander animal this magical? August 20th, Monday. It was time for the gathering again. Since ingesting the hermit potion, Li Meng hadn't gone out at all, constantly familiarizing himself with his newly acquired abilities. Although the Sequence 7 potion, due to special reasons, hadn't granted him any Beander abilities, the growth in his spirituality was still clearly visible. He could now almost use the Beander abilities of the Shepherd's Gloves number 9998 without restriction. The situation where he might accidentally deplete his spirituality would no longer occur, meaning his combat power had increased significantly. The combined power of the multiple Beander souls and abilities within the Shepherd's Gloves could now be truly unleashed. From now on, he could proudly call himself a Beander without worrying about being beaten to death by ordinary people. Stories of carelessly dying at the hands of ordinary people probably wouldn't happen to him. Li Meng carefully felt the familiar red light bursting from within his body, but even now, he still couldn't pinpoint where this power came from. The mark transformed by the weather bottle on his arm was always there, yet Li Meng had never sensed any abnormality. He had tried various methods of channeling spirituality into it, but it behaved like an ordinary tattoo. This is a new member, codename, Sun. Mr. Fool's voice seemed forever steady. Chapter 121. Finally, some income. Chapter 121. Finally, some income. This is Miss Justice, and this is Mr. Hanged Man. A new member. Audrey was first startled, then filled with delight. If the new member asked even more awkward questions, then her own matter regarding Susie wouldn't sound so foolish and laughable. This made her, along with Li Meng, focus their attention on the Sun. He's probably not too old. His body language suggests he's a bit nervous and awkward, but he maintains sufficient silence overall, giving a feeling of, well, a lone wolf, yes, a lone wolf. Audrey quietly entered a spectator state, beginning to observe this newly joined member while considering how she should bring up the matter of Susie. Just then, the low and powerful voice of Mr. Hanged Man sounded in her ear, as if after prolonged contemplation, each word brimming with strength. Honorable Mr. Fool, thank you for your intervention and rescue. I have collected 3 pages of a diary, some formulas, and £1,000. This is all the sacrificial offering I can currently provide. Mr. Fool, this is not meant as disrespect. I can only offer 3 pages of the diary at present. I know these are insufficient to offset your aid. You may specify the compensation you desire. Although your power is unmatched, your attendant might still require these mundane worldly things. After all, even the churches of the 7 deities often accept offerings from their believers. Mr. Hanged Man was behaving differently from usual, somewhat agitated, mixed with a bit of fanaticism, and some calmness. Mr. Fool intervened to save Mr. Hanged Man. How come I didn't know? What's the situation with this newcomer? Does he know Mr. Hanged Man? Listening to Mr. Hanged Man's account, Audrey felt her own matters were utterly trivial compared to his. Mr. Hanged Man has likely experienced many battles, surviving by chance under the protection of Mr. Fool. And here I am, still distracted by those trivial matters. This is unacceptable. Audrey, you are to become a major figure in the mysterious world. You can no longer waste your spirit on such things. Tomorrow, sell the Trickmaster formula to Furs, then hurry to purchase the Telepathis formula, aiming to complete the advancement as soon as possible and become a Sequence 8 Beander. Watching the 3 pages of Russell's diary materialized by Mr. Hanged Man, Klein, seated at the head of the bronze long table, nearly wept with emotion. Finally, some income. So many tarot club meetings had passed. He had opened an anonymous account at the Backland Bank several weeks ago, and he had read the descriptions about attendance in the Revelation of the Night many times over. Yet, he had never found a suitable opportunity to broach the subject. Mr. Hanged Man's information and knowledge had always been in a state of overwhelming superiority. Even when he had a chance to speak, he often risked exposing flaws, forcing him to cautiously maintain the persona of an aloof expert, never lightly engaging in transactions. This also meant he had been running the Tarot Club as a charitable venture all along. But he could not abandon the Tarot Club, nor could he even kick Mr. Hanged Man out. Since becoming a seer and mastering the acting method, he had grown increasingly aware of the peculiarities within the Church of the Goddess of Night. Various signs indicated the Church undoubtedly possessed the acting method, yet showed no intention whatsoever of disseminating it to the Nighthawks. If this only left Klein feeling puzzled, then the annihilation of the Antigonus family was enough to make Klein extremely wary. The Church of the Goddess of Night eradicated the Antigonus family, which held the seer pathway, yet only released the Sequence 9, seer formula. They didn't even record the name of the Sequence 8 potion in any books. This showed the Church had absolutely no desire for Beyonders of that pathway to advance further, even I don't want hoping for seer pathway Beyonders to appear at all. Combining these 2 clues, Klein, having watched countless palace intrigue dramas in his previous life, naturally concluded, if he advanced to Sequence 8 of the seer pathway, his situation would become very dangerous. If he insisted on advancing to higher sequences, he would surely end up like some supporting characters in those dramas, vanishing silently from this world, his rotting corpse discovered in some foul ditch. Klein was thoroughly frightened by his own conclusion. He felt his only hope for turning things around lay with the Tarot Club, with Mr. Hanged Man, with the knowledge and information he possessed. This was also the fundamental reason why, even if he had to get up in the middle of the night, he would check what was happening above the gray fog, and why he would risk his life to intervene and save Mr. Hanged Man. But Mr. Hanged Man is being too polite. He's not even giving me a chance to use the excuses I prepared. He lightly tapped the table, causing the 3 diary pages to appear in his hand. Read the diary first, we can talk about the pounds later. Faced with £1,000, I must keep my composure. Although it's a large sum of money, Mr. Fool should be indifferent and detached towards money. Don't think about those £1,000. Let me see what surprises this diary might bring. What happened between Emperor Russell and the maid from the countryside after Matilda became pregnant? Countess Frelace invited Emperor Russell to a private party. What happened afterwards? Archbishop Van Esten sought Emperor Russell's help with the matter. What did they do? What happened with the Church of the Eternal Blazing Sun, the Church of the Lord of Storms, the Church of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom, the Church of the Goddess of Night, and the God of Combat Church of the Fasak Empire? What organization's gathering did Emperor Russell attend? Klein read the diary in his hand several times over. Even as a transmigrator with perfect Chinese proficiency, he felt somewhat helpless at this moment. He desperately wanted to make complaint vent, but didn't know who to tell. Those terrifying sentence fragments were both suggestive and utterly frustrating. Klein helplessly put down the journal, letting it dissipate above the gray fog. Let's talk about these £1,000 first. Honorable Mr. Fool, these are the formulas I have collected. Given your power, you are likely already aware of them, but this is the most precious sacrificial offering I could gather. Watching Mr. Hanged Man swiftly transcribing onto the materialized parchment, Klein grew increasingly puzzled. What kind of person have I brought in here? Seer, apprentice, marauder, spectator, bard, reader, sailor, secret supplicant, corpse collector, sleepless, warrior, hunter, assassin, planter, apothecary. A full 22 pathways, from sequence 9 to sequence 7, all the potion formulas appeared on it. Even though Mr. Fool was entirely shrouded in gray fog, Audrey keenly perceived that the hand holding the parchment was trembling slightly. What on earth did Mr. Hanged Man write that could cause Mr. Fool to lose his composure like this? At this moment, Audrey's curiosity was completely ignited. She even had an impulse to exchange Russell's diary for the parchment in Mr. Fool's hand. But remembering how 3 pages of Russell's diary were snatched away at Mr. A's last gathering, she could only helplessly suppress the thought. Chapter 122, Let's All Sell Together. Li Meng's feelings towards this tarot club meeting were exceedingly complex. Lola's loss of control within the primordial moon's temple was his first encounter with a genuine life and death crisis, his first true realization of his own predicament, and his first time facing such a difficult choice. Because after seeing the sun, he had awakened some memories concerning the original work. In those memories, the Amons could sense the aura of Saphira Castle, even entering it by lurking within others' bodies. In those memories, Amon and Mr. Fool were irreconcilable enemies, destined to destroy each other. In those memories, Amon was born for deception. Entering Saphira Castle through an avatar, then triggering a certain error to allow a more powerful avatar to enter was the most ordinary of operations. But why hadn't the Amon avatars discovered he had entered Saphira Castle? Why hadn't they sensed the aura of Saphira Castle on him? This was far too abnormal. If number 4 couldn't detect it due to distance, what about number 30 on Tiana Island? He was a true demigod, a powerhouse of the thief pathway. Why hadn't he discovered it? Or had he discovered it and not told the other avatars? Li Meng's intuition told him that number 4 probably hadn't discovered his secret. Otherwise, he wouldn't have sent those watchers but would have used a demigod-level avatar, or even intervened directly. He simply wouldn't have survived until now. As for number 30, he had never understood what the other party wanted to do, what exactly he had discerned. But this didn't mean he could keep hiding from number 4 and those high-sequence avatars of the thief pathway forever. Now he had to make a choice, Mr. Fool or Amon. Li Meng made his decision within 3 seconds. It was a difficult decision, and also a logical one. Quickly enhance Klein's strength to confront Amon. At this moment, he felt a weight lift from his entire body. I should still play along with Klein's performance. Being too direct would startle him. The potion formulas for all 22 pathways could be given directly to Klein. The £1,000 obtained from the Tarot Club trade could also be given directly to Klein. Although it seemed like a loss on the surface, in the long run, the benefits were immense. With this money and the formulas for the Seer pathway, Klein could advance to sequence 7 as soon as possible, mobilize more of the Grey Fog's power, and provide him with even stronger protection. Where there is a great reward, there will be brave men. Although he wasn't clear what would happen in the future, the one who could best guarantee his safety was still Mr. Fool. Why £1,000? Because Li Meng only had £10.35 left in his backland numbered account. As for selling the formulas, after obtaining these formulas and the £1,000, Klein wouldn't sell these formulas at the Tarot Club anymore. The profit was small and would damage Mr. Fool's image. Then the money the Tarot Club members used to buy formulas would all be his. In selling formulas offline, the Beander circles of the two parties didn't overlap in the short term, so there was no transactional relationship. And he himself had already advanced to sequence 7. The value of low sequence formulas would soon depreciate in his hands. Rather than selling them himself, it was better for everyone to sell together. Most importantly, Mr. Fool's intervention to save him this time gave him sufficient reason to give these formulas to Mr. Fool. As for how to explain the source of these formulas, after the incident with the vampire Lola, he believed the two sides had reached a certain tacit understanding and wouldn't probe too deeply. Everyone cared about saving face. When a group of turncoats gathered together, the biggest taboo was to investigate each other's roots. Moreover, Li Meng believed that if Klein hadn't discovered his abnormality after all this time, it meant he didn't know he was an Amon avatar. As Mr. Fool quietly flipped through the long scroll of parchment, the Tarot Club fell into a deathly silence. Even the sun, attending the Tarot Club for the first time, sensed the unusual atmosphere. After a long time, he saw Mr. Fool put away the parchment scroll, letting it vanish into the gray fog. "I am satisfied." Hearing Mr. Fool's soothing and relaxed voice, Sun, Derek Berg and Justice, Audrey Hall simultaneously let out a long sigh of relief. For some reason, while Mr. Fool was reading the formulas, they felt even more nervous than the Hanged Man. "Honorable Mr. Fool, I would like to venture a question. Does the formula provided by Mr. Hanged Man include higher sequence formulas for the spectator pathway?" Audrey took a deep breath and asked, slightly nervous. "I can use a page of Russell's diary as the price for this exchange, if you are willing." Hearing Miss Justice's voice, Klein finally recovered from the shock brought by the 22 Beander pathway potion formulas. Although he had temporarily resolved the issue using the tone and manner he had cultivated through multiple Tarot Club meetings, he soon discovered a new problem. He couldn't trade these formulas at the Tarot Club anymore. Being seen by the Hanged Man would severely damage his image. Moreover, with the £1,000 promised by the Hanged Man, he didn't need too much money in the short term. Damaging Mr. Fool's image for such a small sum was highly unwise. Even if he needed money later, he could casually sell some formulas and the money would come back. There was no need to rush. I can submit some formulas to the Nighthawks in exchange for sufficient contributions to obtain the materials for the clown potion as soon as possible. As for whether Mr. Hanged Man was doing this intentionally, such thoughts were quickly cast aside by Klein. One might use a meat bun to hit a dog, but no one uses a whole pig to hit a dog. Thinking of this, he leaned back in his chair, adopting an extremely casual tone and said, "You may exchange with the Hanged Man." Mr. Fool's demeanor seemed completely indifferent to these formulas, even disinclined to engage in such low-level trades. Observing Mr. Fool's tone and voice, Audrey suddenly had a great realization. This indicates Mr. Hanged Man has higher sequence formulas for the spectator pathway. Audrey looked at the Hanged Man sitting opposite her, about to speak, when she noticed the Sun, sitting diagonally across from him, had also realized this and had already spoken, his tone urgent and forceful, tinged with surprise. "I wish to exchange for the initial sequences of the Sun pathway. What do I need to use to exchange with you?" Looking at the young man before him, Li Meng discovered that some interesting things had been added to his memories. "I need 6 tentacles of the gloomy jellyfish, and a piece of crimson rot moss. Of course, their price may far exceed that of the Sun's formula. I can supplement you with more potion formulas or anything else you need." Sun Pathway Sequence 9, Bard. Main ingredients: 1 crystallized sunflower, or the tail feather of an adult firestone bird, or the tail feather of an arson bird, 1 piece of siren stone, or 1 singing sunflower. Auxiliary ingredients: 1 midsummer grass, 5 drops of July wine juice, 1 leaf of dark elf leaf. As Mr. Hanged Man's words fell, Klein suddenly discovered a very important problem. How would the Hanged Man receive the Sun's items? Thinking deeper, he suddenly discovered an even more critical issue. Wasn't the Hanged Man worried about not receiving the items? Chapter 123. No one understands the Tarot Club better than me. Klein had always harbored a strange feeling about the Hanged Man, and only now did he understand exactly what that strangeness was. The hanged man's identity and background definitely held secrets. Everyone has secrets, just like his own impersonation of Mr. Fool. That in itself wasn't strange, and Klein could grudgingly accept it. He had no immediate plans to investigate further, nor did he possess the capability to do so. Taiwan novel website offers a great reading experience, easy to read. But regarding the Tarot Club, Mr. Hanged Man seemed far too confident. It felt like a thief had broken into the owner's house. The owner believed he had no money worth stealing, but the thief was brimming with confidence, firmly convinced the owner was wealthy, and persistently helped the owner search until they finally found a large sum of money. Why did such a bizarre metaphor come to mind? Klein fell into deep thought. Mr. Hanged Man hadn't stolen any money from me. Perhaps my acting was too good, giving him too much confidence. Never mind. No matter what, no one understands the Tarot Club better than I do. No matter how capable the Hanged Man is, he can't compare to me, the master of the Tarot Club. Klein quietly touched the deep red star representing the Hanged Man with his spirituality, discovering he could sever the Hanged Man's connection to this gray fog at any moment. Only then did he let out a long sigh of relief. If it were me encountering an ancient deity like Mr. Fool, I'd be terrified too. After all, this mysterious gray fog, this suddenly appearing bronze long table, and this ability to pull people in regardless of distance, everything screamed of an ancient, powerful being. The reason I lack confidence is simply because I know Mr. Fool is my impersonation. I need to learn from the Hanged Man. I must believe Mr. Fool is a mysterious and powerful deity, and believe it from the bottom of my heart. To hell with demigods, saints, angels, and subordinate deities. Mr. Fool is a true deity, a mysterious existence that has lived at least since the third epoch. It's perfectly normal for an ancient being to be out of touch with reality. Thinking this, he casually extended his right hand, preparing to make a sound on the bronze long table to attract everyone's attention. Just as his fingers hovered in the air, he suddenly heard the son's youthful, slightly hesitant voice. I don't have any of those materials you mentioned. What should I use to trade with you? I knew there would be problems. Klein silently retracted his right hand. Mr. Hanged Man seemed to have anticipated this, his tone completely calm. I'm not in a hurry. You just need to keep an eye out. Of course, the Beander characteristic of a rose bishop would also work. The son seemed hesitant, his voice full of confusion and apology. I have heard of the Beander characteristic of a rose bishop, but I can't possibly obtain it right now. Wouldn't I be taking your formula for nothing then? It's fine. I trust you. You can use the Bard formula first, and then keep an eye out for what I need later. There must be a reason Mr. Fool chose you. The reason I chose the sun was because only his star was shining above the gray fog. If I said that out loud, no one would believe me. Klein, his body completely still within the gray fog, internally ranted like crazy. Oh, I see. Then I'll try to find the Beander characteristic of a rose bishop as soon as possible. Obtaining something like that requires accumulating a lot of contributions for an exchange. Originally, it would have been impossible for me, but if I become a Bard, or a higher sequence Beander, I might have a chance to get it. As if feeling his words lacked conviction, son, Derek Berg added softly. Boshu 69 knew. It might take a very long time. I can't guarantee success. It's fine. I have plenty of patience. I can give you the formulas for the Sun Pathways Sequence 8 and Sequence 7 in advance, if you need them. The Hanged Man's tone remained as flat as ever, as if he were handing out children's books worth a few pennies, not expensive potion formulas. This, Mr. Hanged Man trusts me too much. I must gather the potion materials for Bard as soon as possible, advance to Sequence 9, and then find what he needs. Son, Derek Berg felt hope for the first time and had a clear direction to strive for. However, Mr. Hanged Man is being far too casual. Could it be that in his city-state, Sun Pathway formulas are sold freely? Ahem, Mr. Hanged Man, are you able to sell the Spectator Pathway Sequence 7 potion formula now? Having waited for a long time, Justice, Audrey finally seized the opportunity to ask. Miss Justice, are you sure you want to purchase the Spectator Pathway Sequence 7, Psychiatrist formula now? I suggest you consider the Psychiatrist only after fully digesting the Telepathist potion, or try obtaining the formula from the Psychology Alchemists. That would ease the financial pressure. After all, the meander path is very costly and can even bankrupt a noble family. We must use every pound cautiously to ensure we can travel further on the meander path. Li Meng's voice was dead serious, as if admonishing a young woman addicted to online loans. No, I'm just preparing in advance so I can buy the materials directly when I see them. As for the psychology alchemists, thank you for the lead. I've already started contacting them. However, I don't see obtaining a formula from them and purchasing one at the Tarot Club as mutually exclusive. I prefer a more certain way to acquire the formula. Miss Justice stated with great conviction. All right, you've successfully convinced us. Li Meng and Klein fell silent simultaneously. Although, son, Derek Berg didn't fully understand what Miss Justice was saying, he could still sense that the Justice sitting opposite him was practically glowing. Sequence 7. Psychiatrist, £2,500. Do you confirm you wish to proceed with the transaction? Li Meng glanced at Miss Justice, as if making a final confirmation. I confirm. Sequence 7. Psychiatrist. Main ingredients are 1 pair of mirror dragon eyes, 1 fruit from an elder tree. Supplementary ingredients are 50 milliliters of mirror dragon blood, 3 leaves from an elder tree, 3 petals of a pure blue spirit flower, 3 blossoms of a pure red spirit flower, and 100 milliliters of pure water. Li Meng recited the formula unhurriedly. The current Miss Justice no longer needed repetition, she could memorize the formula after Li Meng described it once. Now she didn't even need Mr. Fool to guarantee the correctness of the potion formula, as Mr. Hanged Man had never deceived her, both in terms of price and accuracy. Do you have the Sequence 9, apothecary formula? £200. I will transfer the corresponding amount to your account after the transaction concludes. What's going on with Miss Justice? Although puzzled, Li Meng quickly recited the apothecary formula. After all, it was also money. Sequence 9. Apothecary main ingredients: horn of an adult unicorn Pegasus, 3 grams of crown jellyfish venom crystal. Chapter 124. Do you need the simple, detailed, or complete version? Chapter 124. Do you need the simple, detailed, or complete version? I've recently come into contact with some meander circles and learned about a powerful individual called Mr. A. Mr. Fool, Mr. Hanged Man, Mr. Sun, do you know his background and true identity? I don't even know what you're talking about. Derek remained silent. Mr. A. I only know Mr. Z. Such similar codenames, could he also be from the Aurora Order? Klein speculated in his mind but didn't answer. He had to maintain his image, trying not to give answers he wasn't very confident about. If he really faced such a situation, his descriptions would have to be vague, like a charlatan. Open black lens bracket. Remember this site's domain name. Taiwan Novel Network has many books, read anytime. Close black lens bracket. More importantly, he was now an ancient deity who had awakened from the third epoch. How could he know an unknown person like Mr. A? It didn't make sense. Fortunately, Miss Justice didn't seem to intend to get more information from them and instead looked directly at the Hanged Man. Li Meng cleared his throat and began the familiar routine. Do you need the simple, detailed, or complete version? Damn the complete version. At this moment, Klein couldn't help but want to sever the Hanged Man's connection and remove him from the Tarot Club. What's the difference between them? The simple version is £20, introducing Mr. A's organization and his meander pathway. The detailed version is £200, with more comprehensive content. The complete version is £1,000. What does the complete version include? I want to hear the complete version. Would it kill you to just say it all at once? Do I look like someone who lacks money? Audrey grumbled discontentedly in her heart. The complete information cannot be described itself. Once spoken, it will cause indescribable consequences, requiring Mr. Fool's protection to listen to it safely. Li Meng's voice was full of temptation, like the whisper of a demon. Mr. Fool, you will protect us, right? As a spectator, Audrey knew the Hanged Man was tempting her, but she still couldn't resist listening. Curiosity is human nature, and that slightly dangerous but safe curiosity is the greatest torment to human reason. Of course. Mr. Fool's tone was calm. Speak quickly. If what you say doesn't satisfy me, I'll kick you out of the Tarot Club immediately. In Klein's heart, a demon was also roaring. Do you need to communicate privately? Li Meng asked casually. Just say it here. I think everyone is curious about this 1,000-pound piece of information. Audrey said very generously. The Aurora Order has 5 saints and 22 messengers. These messengers use letters as codenames, calling themselves Mr. A, Mr. X, etc. They are at least Sequence 7 Beyonders, with the strongest being Sequence 5, and are all very good at concealing themselves. When one messenger dies, a new one takes their place. The Mr. A you encountered is likely this one. The Aurora Order has always respected strength, and messengers ranked higher are generally more powerful. Mr. A should be the most powerful messenger in the Aurora Order. Audrey nodded slightly, becoming even more wary of Mr. A. This is the 20-pound information. Mr. A is a Beyander of the secret supplicant pathway, currently at Sequence 5, Shepherd. According to unreliable statistics, he shepherds many powerful souls, thus possessing extremely bizarre and powerful Beyander abilities. The most powerful among them is a Sequence 5 Demoness of Afflictions, who has the ability to create diseases and make herself more beautiful. Why does this feel so strange? Is making oneself more beautiful considered a powerful Beyander ability? Audrey wanted to quietly complain, but remembering her 1,000-pound information fee, she ultimately sat upright in the high-backed chair and listened intently. Mr. A also shepherds a soul from the apprentice pathway, possibly a Sequence 6 scribe, which allows him to record and use all abilities he has ever seen. The combination of shepherd and scribe gives his Beyander abilities infinite possibilities. What happens after the scribe records the shepherd's shepherding ability? Audrey suddenly interrupted and asked. That's a good question, and I'd like to know the answer too. Let's continue introducing Mr. A's abilities. Li Meng subtly changed the subject. Mr. A may also shepherd souls from the Sailor, Evernight, Abyss, and Lawyer pathways, but there is no conclusive evidence, as it's impossible to determine whether these abilities come from the scribe or from Beyander souls of those pathways. For a moment, Audrey and Klein were absorbed in Li Meng's narration, not speaking for a long time. Audrey was surprised by Mr. A's power and cruelty. Mr. A's abilities indicated he had killed at least 6 Beyonders. And Klein was thinking of other things. With so many Beyander characteristics, how much money would they be worth if sold? The 200-pound information has been introduced. Finally, I will introduce the 1,000-pound information. You'd best not discuss it outside the Tarot Club, otherwise, it might attract the attention of deities. Mr. A is a true lunatic. Under Mr. A's leadership, the Aurora Order is secretly conducting a divine descent ritual in the northern continent. The offspring of an evil god born from this ritual possess the strength of an angel at birth. If not stopped in time, they could destroy an entire city at any moment. What I can confirm is that a large part of this ritual will take place in Backland and a nearby city. The best way to determine if this ritual has begun is to observe whether a large number of innocent people in the city suddenly die or disappear. Listening to Li Meng's still calm tone, Audrey suddenly couldn't react. How did a casual conversation turn into a matter between deities? An offspring of an evil god with the strength of an angel, would Backland still be safe? Thinking of this, she suddenly recalled the hanged man's voice from earlier, requiring Mr. Fool's protection to listen to them safely. That voice was so calm and steady. Right, Mr. Fool. You will definitely prevent the disaster from happening, right? I'd rather die than go to Backland. Thinking this, Klein lightly tapped the bronze long table with his right hand. I'm just a Sequence 9 seer. How did I get involved with angels and deities again, and a divine descent ritual to be held in Backland? This is too much for me. All actions will have their consequences, just at different times. He was almost moved by his momentary inspiration. Although it seemed to criticize the Aurora Order, he had in fact made no promises. After thinking carefully for a while, he felt he didn't need to worry too much. After all, Backland definitely had more powerful Nighthawks members, and perhaps the offspring of an evil god would be eliminated before it even emerged. Although his Mr. Fool persona might be a bit exaggerated, the Evernight goddess should be real, right? When the sky falls, they'll hold it up. What does it have to do with Mr. Fool? Mr. Fool is just a weak deity who has just awakened and hasn't had time to recover his strength. Chapter 125, even if it is just a dog. I will pay you 3,700 pounds after the Tarot Club ends. That is the correct amount, right? Audrey was immersed in the illusory sense of security brought by Mr. Fool and Mr. Hanged Man, and she had no intention of leaving Backland at all, nor did she even think of reporting to the church or the authorities. Yes. The Hanged Man's tone was as calm as ever. I have one more question. As Audrey's voice fell, the atmosphere of the Tarot Club became even quieter. Just how much money does Miss Justice have? Did she just rob a bank? Mr. Fool, whose weekly income was only £6, began to doubt his life at this moment. Just now, the money Miss Justice spent would take Klein 10 years of risking his life at the Nighthawks, without eating or drinking, to earn. And to spend £3,700, Miss Justice only used 3 questions, taking less than 10 minutes in total. What made Klein even more depressed was that when Miss Justice asked this question, her eyes were fixed on Mr. Hanged Man. He didn't even have a chance to interject. Why did I call myself Mr. Fool? I could have called myself the god of gold pounds and wealth back then, so I could openly accept bribes from believers. No, I mean offerings from believers. Klein began to think about changing his honorable name, but after a burst of intense thinking, he helplessly gave up. A divine name can be changed at will, but there is only one Miss Justice. It's like this. I have a friend whose pet became a bit abnormal after taking a potion. It became exceptionally smart and wise. Audrey's voice began to falter, and her tone was full of hesitation. She lacked the decisiveness she had when spending money just now, and the sound of the last word was so soft it was almost inaudible. What pathways potion did the pet take, and specifically, what sequence is it at? The Hanged Man's voice sounded quite interested. If I say Susie drank the spectator potion, everyone except the sun will immediately know that friend is me. Maybe they already know. Different thoughts tumbled through Audrey's mind, and she quickly came up with an idea. I don't know exactly which sequence it is, but it acts even smarter than its owner, who also drank a potion. It's hard to believe it was just a beast before. This question has stumped me. Li Meng searched his mind repeatedly and found no corresponding memory, unsure if it didn't exist in the original work or if he just couldn't recall it. But Audrey's money shouldn't be wasted like this. Klein also understood why Miss Justice didn't ask him. After all, this question was too disrespectful to a deity. Just as Li Meng was thinking about how to answer this question, he suddenly heard the sun's slightly honest voice. I might know what's going on. There are many monsters around the City of Silver, but some monsters are clearly more powerful than their peers. Our textbooks say these monsters are closer to their ancestors, so they can better master Beander characteristics. In textbooks. Closer to ancestors. Since when could Beander knowledge be in textbooks? Audrey wondered if she had misheard, but the Hanged Man opposite her sat there calmly, not looking surprised at all. And the sun also took it for granted. His posture, which required no explanation, said everything. She looked at Mr. Fool at the head of the bronze long table again and found that his posture hadn't changed at all, still leaning quietly against the high-backed chair. Am I the only one who feels surprised? Just as Audrey felt slightly embarrassed, the Hanged Man's steady voice came from across the long table. The sun's statement just now reminds me of some legends. Certain pathways were once held by certain Beander races. If an ordinary animal contains a trace of a Beander race's bloodline, they will find it easier to master the potion of that pathway and use more powerful Beander abilities. I think the pet Miss Justice described is likely in this situation. Li Meng spoke his thoughts while trying to reconstruct the truth of the matter. Audrey was clearly talking about Susie, the golden retriever she kept at home. Other than that, she hadn't come into contact with any other Beander animals yet. If Susie mastered the spectator potion better, it might be that dogs are more suited to the spectator's acting method, but no matter how smart a dog is, it cannot surpass the wisdom of the human race in a short time. And Audrey didn't look like a fool. If even she thought it was excessively smart, then it could only be the situation the sun mentioned. Susie was closer to a powerhouse of the spectator pathway than Audrey was. The spectator pathway is also called the Giant Dragon Pathway. This was recorded in the Scholar's Book No. 9998. What could help Susie better master the spectator potion was undoubtedly the bloodline inheritance from the Giant Dragon race. A golden retriever with Giant Dragon bloodline. But how could a dog have Giant Dragon bloodline? Li Meng felt this had touched upon his blind spot of knowledge. Then how should I treat it? Because she was too shocked, Audrey didn't even notice that her wording was somewhat revealing. Actually, you don't need to care too much. Every life has a purpose for existing, you just need to maintain enough respect for it. Ahem, if it's your friend, I suggest she pray to Mr. Fool. Not everyone can accept a pet being smarter than themselves. Humans are proud animals, it's hard to adjust one's mindset when facing such things. Being able to accept that others are smarter than oneself is an improvement in self-awareness, even if it is just a dog. Li Meng acted as if he hadn't heard, bringing up her friend again and putting emphasis on it. Fine, I can now accept a dog that is smarter than me. But could you not use a dog as an example? I suspect you're doing it on purpose. Audrey's voice was somewhat weak. Do I need to pay for this information? Mr. Sun, Mr. Hanged Man. These are all trivial matters, consider them a gift. Li Meng waved his hand and said very generously. Of course, the main reason was that this information wasn't worth many gold pounds, and it would have to be split with Mr. Sun. The Sun, Derek Berg, originally wanted to speak and exchange something useful with Miss Justice, but hearing Mr. Hanged Man say this, he could only silently change his words in his heart. He was a child after all, and even a bit shy at the Tarot Club. Although he felt the Hanged Man was being generous at someone else's expense, it wasn't good to contradict him now. After all, he had just obtained the barred formula from him. Then let it be a gift. The Hanged Man waived Audrey's fee for purchasing the information, but she couldn't feel happy at all. Since childhood, she had never heard of anyone being sillier than a dog. Now she was the first, and she had to actively adjust her mindset to accept this fact. This cast a shadow over the carefree young girl's heart. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. For those who want to read more, I have Patreon free right now. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.